Well, Jenny's not.
Jordan had.
Well, that's all right.
It says it's streaming, the blue lights are on, I think we might be okay.
Oh, no.
Thanks everybody for coming.
That's okay.
Yeah, come up and sit at the table, please. We have a smaller group, so maybe, does everybody know everybody?
No.
Why don't we just, I'm Chip, everybody knows me, the loudmouth. Go ahead, why don't we just introduce ourselves around the table?
Glenn Carter, Lyle Dooley.
Cindy Otash.
Deborah Wilson.
You know, I'm Don Lukes.
Chris Kilpatrick.
Laura Bragg.
Paul Colbert. All right. Now, looks like we have some more people coming in as well, so. There's some handouts there. Just take one from the pile.
One for me.
And I'll try to walk through everybody what's there. And then I guess I'd like to start off by asking people what they want for the ground rules, so to speak. So instead of everybody talking over each other, it's kind of like an ad hoc committee, but we don't have it, it's not really a committee, so I'm not sure if you want to necessarily, I mean, we could have a chairman of the committee if we want to, somebody in charge, or, you know, I'm open to ideas. I don't mind trying to facilitate, but I certainly don't want to be doing the talking. I prefer people to be doing the talking, so I throw it out there. I don't know how you guys want to.
I just think talking was the problem last week.
Huh?
I don't think talking was the problem last week.
No, but I mean, it's just a matter, you get people having side conversations, you get.
Yeah, that's no problem.
So you can't hear each other and you can't, so, you know, so I'm just trying to have it a little bit more controlled, controlled chaos or structured chaos, or however you wanna.
I guess my suggestion is if we're actually going through, you know, point by point, is to try to keep the conversation, you know, around the point.
Cool, we got more people. If I need to make more copies,
Yes, 'cause we're out.
I will.
We have no more for him.
Huh?
We have no more for him.
I've got
You,
Oh.
probably.
you have all these? I can share with,
You got
No, you
she
can't.
and I are best buddies, so we can share.
Don't let that get out.
Don't tell my wife.
So do you want me to try to keep people on topic and keep us to the line? We wanna all try to do that? I mean, how do you wanna?
I think if you present a topic, then we could all kind of.
So I mean, it's, tonight we're looking to go through lot size 2017, so that's the ordinance we wanted to go through. You'll look at the package and you won't see it on the front cover. It is under the one that says zoning ordinance, it's actually the last 3 pages. But I put it there on purpose because I think it's very important to understand how it got there. And so there's things that didn't get included in that lot size that maybe should have. It's important to understand how that stuff got to lot size 17. And so that's why, I mean, we can start with this right now if you want. So what you see is the first, and this is as far as the records that I show, it looks like we had this zoning code ordinance that was initially passed in.
Are you recording?
Yeah. 1970. I'll look again.
Or just making sure.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it passed in 1970. And then at some point, they made some changes and they moved the zoning code ordinance to, they moved it to a lot size ordinance and then to the building code ordinance. So if you look on this front page, it will say amended, see page 2, section 1. So page 2 is a lot size ordinance. You'll see further down it goes, see page 3, section 3. Page 3 is the building code ordinance, and so forth. And so you'll say, see page 5, section 8. Again, that's part of the building code ordinance. So a lot of this stuff was moved. Believe it or not, there's actually some things in the zoning code here that wasn't. So like trailer park owners, that part never got changed. That's section 4. You can see that never went away. So that part is just still sitting there. So when I went through this, I went through all these things to see, because nobody ever repealed the zoning code ordinance. So unless an ordinance is repealed by the voters, it's still even though you may move one section to another one, that ordinance is still there.
What's the process of moving the ordinance from?
Well, no, they made a motion to amend it, to move this section amended C page, so they moved that section. So for example, section 2, lot size. So under zoning ordinance, they said no single residence or trailer, seasonal or otherwise, may be erected. Plot of land having less than the equivalent of 100 by 200 square feet of area. So that was our original lot size in this town, was 100 by 200 square feet. That's why we have a bunch of non-conforming lots, especially on the waterfront. And a minimum of 100 feet. So that got moved to the lot size ordinance, and then obviously at the same time it got changed to 2 full acres.
But this was never repealed and removed.
Well, this was amended, so that part went away, but if you go down to section 4, where it says trailer park owners, that never got moved. That part never got amended. So essentially, unless you make this whole ordinance go away, whatever got left, whatever didn't get amended is still active. So, and it's trying to go through all that stuff and catch that. So the lot size ordinance is here. They increased it. They also increased setbacks. So setbacks used to be at a lower level, and they increased them. The building code ordinance, again, a lot of the building code ordinance went away when MUBEC got adopted, or when the state mandated that we follow MUBEC, but not everything in the building code ordinance went away. So we, and you'll see that here, and I went through that, and it was minimum building area isn't addressed by that. There's other different things that are in here. So if you go to the next page, after you go through all of those, you have this amendment, this minimum angle from front line to sideline. So some of the people that have been here for a while, any idea what that was meant for? I have racked my brain, and that I think is currently in our lot size ordinance, and I've racked my brain to figure out what does that really mean, and what did they try to do when they set this up?
I don't remember ever being an issue on the planning board.
Minimum straight line distance of 120 feet between the sides. I don't know what that.
Probably so that you couldn't have like triangular lots.
Right.
Because if you go with a triangular lot and you're trying to meet all your setbacks, then there's going to be a vast majority of your lot that you aren't able to utilize. So if you have it so that 120 feet, then under the old ordinances, you would have been able to build on the vast majority of your lot versus having, like, if you are going with, like, I would say, if hypothetically, if it was a 200-foot setback from any property line, then if you have, say, a 2-acre lot, then it's, you've got a lot like this, square, and now you've got a small area that you can build in, versus if you have something that was triangular, now your buildable area is now like this tiny little sliver.
Right, but I guess my point is, if I get a 2-acre triangle,
Yep.
and one of those sides has to meet frontage, so that one of those sides has to be along a road.
Yep. So
Who cares about the other 2 sides? And it's 2 acres. I got plenty of room to put a house.
apparently, according to the ordinances, the building inspector does.
Well, that's what I'm asking, is I'm just saying is
So
why.
if you have 200 feet of frontage, that's what you're required now, am I correct?
Yeah.
So 200 feet of frontage, but now you've got a lot that's, God, I'm very tired, whatever, like, the distance it would be back to make 2 acres. Like, say if one side is 200 feet and that's the long, like, the road frontage side, and now you're saying it's gotta be 2 acres.
200 by 400.
Okay, so, but now it's a triangle, so you can go back, say, 600, because now you've got,
200 by 400?
For 2 acres.
Yeah, it is.
200 by 400? Okay.
10 acres, 200 by 200.
Okay,
So, well, 87,120 feet.
Right.
Square feet.
right. Yeah.
right, so like, that would make it such you could have a very long, skinny
One long
lot,
lot line and
but,
Right, but I guess my point is, as long as I'm meeting the 50-foot setback.
A lot of
200
towns
feet of
won't
frontage.
allow a long skinny lot. They just don't want it,
because then
whether
if
you
you've got
can
a
make
right
your
of-
setbacks or not.
Right, because then if you've got a right of way that runs through it, now that's like a vast majority, again, that takes even more buildable space away out of your lot. So now you own 2 acres, but
So you wouldn't have a right of way that would go through it, because then it would be less than 2 acres.
well, therein lies the question, you know,
Well, yep.
is,
But you know, when we built in Massachusetts, we had to actually purchase an additional acre from our neighbors because we met all the setbacks, but they didn't like our lot shape. It was very long and skinny, and the majority of everything we owned was in the back, and they made us purchase additional next door so that we didn't have that long skinny, they call them spaghetti lots, but, you know, that's what they call them down there in Middleborough, Massachusetts, but yeah, it was about the shape of the lot, so maybe that is why, that makes sense.
That, and, I mean, as you can see, we're sitting here today to update the ordinances and, make them more relevant, if you will, to today. So if, say, it's now determined in 2018 that you want, say, 200 feet of setback from any property line, then a long skinny lot, like I said, is gonna give you a much smaller, buildable area than if you were to say, go from, like, say, 1980s, ordinance where the setback is 50 feet on any property line.
Right.
So, like, then, now you've got all these property lots in Lebanon that go from, say, if we were to sell our lot, that's 2 acres, and it were a very long skinny lot, then that is a long triangle. And now, if, say, somebody wanted to level our house, and, like, they bought it from us, they level the house, which is, you know, their right to do, it's their property, and then wanted to build, now they've got basically an unusable lot to meet current setbacks.
But that's the current.
So that's actually not, I mean, you have grandfather.
Right, but like
So
if
you
our
have-
house were to be completely gone, like if, say, our house were to
So
burn to
they-
the ground and they decided to rip out the foundation, now you've got just nothing but property.
But you're allowed to replace,
Structures.
On the same foundation,
You would
same footprint.
Right,
Place,
I would
but
say,
would a new
if I-
owner be
If I
allowed?
sell my property to Rob, if I sell my property to Rob after my house has been.
and what are the rules? Because the issue is that if somebody buys it knowing what the setbacks are, then that's their choice.
Okay, are you saying, Beth, that you clear the house for whatever
Yeah,
reason?
for whatever
You find out you
reason.
get termites, so you level a house, you have everything drawn out, it then becomes a lot that's 2 acres or whatever it is. I then buy it from you,
So you wouldn't be grandfathered because
Right.
because
Right,
it
but you
changed.
buy it knowing what the laws
Right.
are, what the
Right.
setbacks are, and
Right,
you
but-
take that, whatever you want.
But you could still build on that foundation.
Well, again, well, no, he
No, you
can't.
I
can't.
don't think you can by the law.
No, you
At
can't.
that point,
Yeah,
you
you can.
can't,
New
but
ownership.
No, you can't.
setbacks.
So you wouldn't be
If the setbacks are
grandfathered
such
to
that
something that you
prevent you from
purchased
building,
after the fact.
well, then why would you buy the lot?
Right.
So that's my point is that it doesn't, so,
But
Right, but that's-
but what you're saying is that this is currently the ordinance. What you're saying is
Yeah.
that it's currently the ordinance.
I'm saying hypothetically.
There was a new
talking
one.
about-
No, what I'm saying is what you're describing is in the ordinance now.
Okay.
Right.
yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
It is, it's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because-
I mean, I've read so much of this stuff lately, my head's swimming. And I do remember reading that part.
And what I'm getting at here is, Chip was just, you were trying to clarify as to why the
Right.
lot shape and dimensions matter, correct?
No. So I was trying to clarify why this particular amendment, and which is C of lot size ordinance 2017, why that amendment was done back in 1987, because I didn't understand most stuff and amendments and ordinances are done for a reason. And it's to address a problem or it's to address something that happened, so, we don't want that to happen again, so let's do X, Y, Z ordinance to prevent that.
So that
So it was probably to prevent setbacks where
Right.
you have, like you said, a narrow lot that meets the 2 acre requirements
With 200 feet of front.
with 200 feet of frontage. But if it
But if
comes
it
in
comes
at
like
an
this.
angle,
So you're
And
talking
mine's back
basically an hourglass lot.
yeah.
Sort of.
Of course, the fact is that no one knows. but
None of
people
us
have
are
wrote
here
it.
when,
Right.
Well, that's right, that's why I asked some of the people that were maybe, I
We should
mean, I
just
wasn't
move
around.
on, and the best thing to do if you.
Well, so the question is,
Take it out.
so nobody knows it, so the question is that, do people think it's still appropriate to have this
Can you-
language in here?
Which one is it, Chip?
So it's C of the lot size 2017 ordinance.
Right,
So if you
sorry.
go to the last 3 pages,
Oh, the last 3 feet.
which is the lot size 2017.
What,
I kinda jumped out of order, but
Yeah,
it's the first page of lot size 17.
Okay,
So back
Section
in
Number
the
C.
accepted, if the minimum lot size was 100 by
120
200.
feet.
No, this is
No,
after.
this is after the 2 acres. This is after the 2 acres.
Yeah, that is weird, I read that, yeah, and I couldn't quite understand what the,
And again, so I mean, I just don't know, so do we care if we have a narrow lot like that?
No, because what Mr. Jewett said was, at one point, looking at Kennybone, they said a driveway that goes back long and skinny to the third house, isn't that the way I understood it was went?
Yeah, they had different sizes.
So,
based
but
on-
if you keep that in place, you're not gonna be able to do that, unless you come to an agreement that a driveway.
They have a lot width where that lot intersects with that, the driveway intersects with the lot.
Mhm.
You have to have, like in our case, would be 200 foot of frontage.
On both sides?
No, just on the.
Just one.
you have to
Across
have
the
one.
front.
Across the front of that lot, you'd have to have
Right.
200 foot of frontage. So, they just, they base it on lot width and not road frontage per se.
And did the
So-
200 foot include the driveway that was going back?
Oh, I don't know, I'd have to check that one out.
Okay,
You're getting-
it's just something that.
So question, have you maybe asked the legal team why that would be there? What that, because I mean, that does seem to make sense what she's saying. It's asking that you should have at least 120 feet across at the house location. So that would be your 25-foot setback, on each side is 50. Right, and then, so that leaves you, they're saying that if you're only that far across at the house lot, you might have 200 feet of frontage here, but like she said, it may be skinnier here. They're requiring you have 120 feet across before you build anything.
but why?
Well, it's only 120 feet at the 50-foot point. So you could be 200, go down to 120 at 50 feet, and then go to 0, and it doesn't prevent that.
But can that also be the case?
So this has
The only
3
place that
asterisks
Huh?
after it. What do those 3 asterisks?
That's because it was amended.
It was amended.
It was amended.
Okay,
Wherever the 3 asterisks.
It's at the end.
so what is,
If you go to the end,
Last
the last page shows when the amendment was.
okay, but what is and that is the
It was
amended.
amended in 1987.
And that is the amended
That
language
was
there?
added in 1987. That's what's on this page, which is in your package.
Yeah, okay, I got it, 31487,
So that's what's on this page in your package, which is where I stopped at.
okay.
I don't see why, because if it's gonna be 20 feet from each boundary, what does it matter? How that lot lays. 20 feet on each side and 50 feet from the road.
See, this is what I'm saying, is that if you have a lot that's shaped like a triangle,
Right.
this buildable area is now very small. If you, say these are your setbacks.
Right.
Your buildable area is very small, and now if you have to have a right of way going through it, like we have a right of way going through our property, which takes up a considerable chunk.
But a right of way is not part of your 2 acres.
Yes, it is.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
it
is.
Then it's
No, it's
illegal.
not.
Yes, it is.
It may be on yours if you're grandfathered, but it's not. If you go to any town here, right of ways are not part of the 2 acres.
Okay, well, it is on ours and we're paying
That's fine.
taxes on it.
Well, that's fine. I mean, on yours is again, based on your deed, if that is correct.
Right.
So your 2 acres, including the right of way, is what your lot. And that may have been,
And now we have to conform to all the setbacks for the right of way that runs through our property if we wanna build something. So, but.
but how's that, okay,
So like, I think the reason that they put this in here,
but that doesn't prevent your triangle right there.
No, it doesn't. It only
No.
prevents it at the 50-foot.
At the 50-foot
Right.
mark.
Right.
But that right of way, you still own it, so it's still your land.
Yeah.
right? Yeah, but
It's still your 2 acres,
but it's not usable to us, so.
but it's still your land, you're paying taxes on it, not the
Right.
one out back.
So it's a right of way to somebody else behind you?
To
Right.
3 other people. But I think that it was trying to prevent like the cutback of buildable.
So I guess I'm just asking is what's the thought about whether we keep it or don't keep it?
I mean, do we have a lot of lots in town that are,
No.
I haven't been here that long,
Odd
so
shapes.
I haven't been doing this that long, so I don't know.
I was on the
We
planning
just-
board and I don't remember ever talking
We
about.
just have them on the shoreline.
You were on the planning board in 87, Len?
Shoreline.
Oh, pretty close to that, I'm not sure.
You don't remember why that would have been on there?
No, We didn't talk about
I mean, I just
spaghetti.
have to wonder why it's
Yeah,
there.
it's-
There was something that happened, like Chip said, that why they put that there,
There's other
so.
towns that, were, pretty strict on spaghetti lots, but I don't recall us being at that time. Now, it would be different in the planning board situation too, because, the planning board's got authority to say you can't do that. And, we're not gonna let you do that, but just like a single lot that's not in a subdivision, that can be a different story too altogether, but we didn't talk about spaghetti lots.
Right, and I know in Massachusetts they farm very heavily on the spaghetti lots, and they have that requirement, they have a very similar requirement, and I didn't look to bring anything, because I
They
didn't
do a
know.
lot of stuff down there.
Yeah, well, and for reason too,
So it's been here since '87, so there's no real strong thoughts either way then, would that be correct to say?
Yeah.
Like I say, you still need your 20 feet on each side, you still need your 50 feet.
So whether it stays or whether it goes, there's really nothing,
25.
there's nothing strong to,
Yeah.
alright,
It's 25 feet meantime.
are we okay to move on then? Alright,
So do we wanna make a recommendation or something about that, or how does this process work?
I guess people can, I guess it's, what I'm trying to do is, or the board is trying to do is get as much input as we can on what flies and what people want. But is this a great cross-section of the town? I don't know if it is. And so
There's
there's,
people who cared to be here.
yeah, but again, people care for their own reasons. And so my point is that there's a lot of other people that may not care until something happens.
Right.
So it's those are the people that we're trying to,
But I guess my question is, if we're going to suggest,
so in this,
comes up for a vote,
Yeah, they have to
that
vote
we
on it.
rescind this chapter, by what authority do you
well,
put that in
It goes in front of
for the
people.
ballot?
so basically the authority, the selectmen can put anything on the ballot they want. So that's the authority, the selectmen could say, I wanna make an ordinance to say you can't pee 20 feet from the woods. I mean, we could do that, it's home rule, the selectmen can do that, but it's up to the people, but I'm just saying, it's up to the people to vote on it, so that authority, so what I'm saying is that for us to make changes, we're trying to get as much input as we can.
Yeah.
And so that's why if there's a strong desire from the group to change something, then I think we ought to seriously consider changing that. If there's really no strong desire one way or the other, then I'm not necessarily into changing it.
I don't see,
It's been here since
it's been a
87.
while that they ever had to deal with that particular part of the ordinance.
Yep.
And from what I've heard, you seem to be dealing a lot with what's going on down to the waterfront. Are there a lot of ungrandfathered lots down there?
This particular one came before the planning board, maybe 2 months ago, before I came on.
And it was one that wasn't built on already?
They were splitting it, there was property on it, they were splitting it, and the
So they had
process of
4
splitting it, they had the acreage, but the way the line came down wasn't straight, it came in and then went back out, almost like a arrowhead. And where the narrow part was, he said, no way. It didn't meet our requirements of what you just looked at.
So there's the reason behind looking at it then, for just that reason, correct? I mean, for some reason, they thought enough about this to have written it in and the people voted for it. And there was a lot just recently that,
Go on that kind of thing.
So it fell, it prevented them from doing what they wanted to do, but I'm not sure there was a valid reason to do that, other than that we just said that we wanted.
Right.
So what they.
So if you got a lot that's 80 feet, that
They
lot
said-
will
they
be
said the
built on
line
because of
was
this ordinance,
Right. I mean, it's,
which
And
don't
they
make
can
no
come back
sense.
at us with a variance at that point, correct?
they can, but it's if they try to get a variance, it's very hard in the state of Maine to get a variance. Because you gotta show that you can't get a reasonable use out of your property. If you've got 2 acres and you can put a
Without the
house on it, you can
variance.
get a use of your property.
Well, what was the question? I don't understand what the concern was.
They were just trying to split their
They
lot.
wanted to split it. They wanted to put it.
It was the shape of that new lot, the new 2 acre lot that they were doing, the shape of it, and so they had to change the shape.
Right.
So,
Similar to spaghetti, well, just a different,
Right, it was just a different shape.
but the shape was still 2 acres, so they could still get it, and they could still use it, they could still put a house on it, so there's no variance, there's no way they would get a variance.
It didn't really prevent them from doing what they needed to, they
right.
just needed to adapt a little bit.
That's right, that's
So
right.
isn't that the crux of the problem, because we don't have zoning in this town? You know, the 2 acres applies, but all along the waterfront, there are these lots which
A little
are
too close.
subsized and, you know,
So those are what
of their own little universe.
Those are what are called non-conforming lots. That's actually part of lot size, that's part of the end of it, we'll get into that, but they're governed by that. So let's just try to get through this, and that way I can get to the start of lot size. But this came up here, this was C already, that came up during this progression, that's why I went there. The next one is about wells, so that got added. About wells have to be 50 feet away from the property line, that was also done in 87. That is also part of 2017, that is section V.
Page 2.
Page 2, location of wells. That was brought up actually during the first public hearing that we had.
Right.
There was a question about, because again, you have some small lots, non-conforming, so they don't have a lot of room. They wanna put a well in, and it may be near the property line. There's also ways that you could sleeve these wells or dig them deeper so that they meet the requirements from a septic system. But I think this was designed that wells are easier to locate on a lot than a septic field. And so if I've got 2 blank lots and I put a well right on the boundary, then all of a sudden now I've just told whoever owns that other piece of property, I've just limited as to where they can put their septic. So I think this was designed to say it has to be at least 50 feet away from there so that it provides them some guidance, but this is purely mechanical 50 feet. I would argue that we could probably change the language to 50 feet or equivalent. I don't know how the language, I'd have to talk to the code enforcement officer, by sleeving. So I can put it on the boundary, but I gotta sleeve it so that it would act as though it's 50 feet. Right now, this says it has to be 50 feet. It says, or more, if there's no leeway. I can be 20 feet if I have X sleeve that goes down so far, or I dig it deep enough so it's so far away from the septic. So I think that provides some latitude for people placing their wells and still meets the intent of what this is trying to do, is saying that we don't want to screw somebody, because we don't have sewage. And so septic is the hardest thing to place is a septic system, because of the soils and the size and all that kind of stuff. That's the hardest thing to put in.
Now, is there a distance from the boundary to your septic system?
No.
So if somebody's got their well right on the line and I put my septic like 10
That's
feet
the
from.
problem, and that's the problem, and so you can't.
Can't
So
walk.
if you're last, then your septic system won't let it go there. Cause that's gotta follow wastewater rules, and you gotta be so far away from a well.
So there is a distance from the property line?
Not from a boundary, from somebody else's well,
From a well.
From somebody else's well.
right,
From any well.
right.
This is one we just did. There's the boundary line, there's the septic.
So the problem is that, yeah, you're right, you put your well in first. I got here first, I'm putting my well in. Well, now, that whole area right near the well on the other person's property, they can't
They
use that.
can't put that septic,
Not for
yeah,
100 feet.
Right.
right.
Whatever the rules are, but if you put that well in and you sleeved it, then they could possibly be closer. So that's what I'm saying, is that
So
allowing.
is that practice of sleeving, is that's something new that they're,
No, it's all part of the well drillers. I mean, well drillers have their own, this well drillers commission, they have their own guidelines. And you
I
have
mean, is that
subsurface-
something they're doing now for smaller non-conforming lots? Is that something that they're suggesting be utilized for that purpose?
No, it's just something that they can do. So there's different ways that they can drill, because they have, well drillers run into weird lots all the time, so there's always these ways to do things. Yeah, go ahead.
well, we're dealing with past wells, because now, from what I understand, you couldn't put a well any closer than 25 feet to your neighbor's line.
Do you know that?
50 feet.
50 feet.
Oh, by this.
From your neighbor's line, No,
That's
that's
what-
25 feet from,
50.
No, this,
50 feet.
This ordinance, which is current right now, says 50 feet.
From the property
line.
line.
From our property line.
so again, we're dealing with grandfather wells
Yeah.
versus what you're gonna put in new.
So what I'm saying is that, so the way it is right now, and this came up with a property on Upper Cross Road, was a non-conforming lot. So it was a small lot, 100 by 200 feet, just a small little lot. And there's not a lot of room. Once you put a house there's not a lot of room, and they had to replace their septic. So now they couldn't go here, they had to go here, and so again, you just run out of real estate to where to put the well, especially if you have to then take 50 feet out all the way around. So,
He's actually making it a little bit more adaptable to the different size lots, right?
right, and so that's what I'm basically saying is that, yes, you can go closer to your line as long as you do something to sleeve it, you give a 50-foot equivalent, but it gives you a little bit more flexibility, but that way the property owner next door isn't screwed out of being able to put a septic system in if they need to.
So, as people are purchasing these lots and they're going out of being grandfathered, I assumed that a lot of this, the lot size and all that stuff was to get away from available use of non-conforming lots. We're trying to get away from that, right? We want everybody to have 2 acres.
Right.
So I'm not sure if they're not grandfathered, and we want everybody to go with the 2 acres, why we would then make that change not to require
So the
50
lot,
foot.
the lot when it was established is grandfathered to its size.
Only to that owner, once
No,
it changes hands.
Once the lot is registered with the county,
Right.
that lot is grandfathered for its size, not setbacks, but
Right.
for its size.
Right, I understand that, but now
For all owners.
right, but let's just say that, like she had said earlier, there's no house on it. There was a house on it, now it's not, she transfers it to Rob. He now has to contend with current
So the
building.
perfect example, there was this Upper Cross
Ordinances.
Road, there was a beat up building, it
Right.
got demolished and they put
Right.
one down on there.
Right,
Okay, and they had to redo the septic system and that, they were having a hard time locating the well
right,
because of this rule, and it was an old, small lot. And
right,
so this would have provided them a little bit more flexibility.
on where
you
to
know,
put
be able
that.
to do that. The other thing is even on a 2-acre lot, you may wanna put your house in the corner of your 2 acres and leave the rest as woods or fields or whatever the case may be, or maybe it's rocky, or wetlands, because right now, we don't exclude wetlands from the 2 acres. A lot of towns do have that, when you talk about lot area, they don't include wetlands, but we don't. So you could have 2 acres that a quarter of an acre is high and dry and the rest is wetlands. Okay, and so, yeah, now you're
Squish.
restricted on where you can put your well, so what I'm saying is I'm trying to provide the well drillers, the people with wells, flexibility, but still provide for their next door neighbors to be able to put a septic in, because that's the hardest thing to find a place for.
Well, and also if we go back to our triangular lot conversation, it becomes more important, you know, if somebody's got a triangular shaped lot where,
Right, cause then they could use that whole, somewhere on that whole thing instead of, right.
So I
So
have,
you would propose, oh, sorry, go ahead, sorry.
I've got a question here. Now, we're talking about like making it more feasible for new well drilling procedures, right?
Correct.
So say if,
Or replacement wells, sometimes bad wells.
yep, exactly.
Okay.
So what happens, like, would this sort of, like, say, this property that you're talking of, right, like the 100 by 200, small lot to put a house on, and like you said, the septic is the hardest thing to place. Like, say if you are kind of in a position where you are pigeonholed as to where you can actually put your septic, and say somebody else's well is existing well, grandfathered in well, is within it doesn't meet the
You can't put the
setback.
You can't put the septic there.
Yeah, but
So
some-
then you're completely screwed.
Yeah.
Well, unless you can sleeve the well and then,
Right, but that's the thing, and
Well,
that's,
this was an existing well, so you're trying to put a
No,
septic
but-
in there, an existing
But
well.
if you made an agreement with your neighbor,
Yeah, they
they
could-
pay
so,
to
I was
sleeve
gonna
their
say, so
well.
that's my question, is
Or
like,
if they relocate their well or whatever, I mean.
would it be
Right.
like, kind of more of a mandated, like, hey, this is really like the only place that the septic can go on this property? Would it mandate that the neighbor,
No.
so,
yeah, you'd have to work it
It's
out
on
with your
you.
neighbor.
So is your
And again, this has
proposed
been-
thing
it's
to
been around
include
since
that?
'87 as well, so this rule's been around since '87, so.
Is your suggestion to include that kind of language to allow for sleeved wells?
Yeah, I mean, that came up and that seems reasonable. I understand a lot of times, so we talked to Steve and he said just to let it be whatever the well drillers commission, but the problem is that the well drillers don't, you can do 25, they don't say that you have to sleeve it, and so I'm trying to recognize why this was probably done, because septics are harder to locate. So I think trying to retain that, but giving them a little bit more flexibility that as long as they can sleeve it or do it so that it's like a 50-foot equivalent. I don't know what the wording is. I gotta figure out the wording and talk to Steve about the wording, but everybody understand my thought pattern.
Right.
Trying to-
Yeah,
So you could be 25 feet as long as
The
your
sleeve.
equivalent, the sleeve acts as though it's 50 feet.
I think the new state law has something to say about the sleeving too. I don't know if you need a permit
I
from the
think
state.
they're involved somehow.
Yeah, they've gotten involved
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah, so I'll look into that.
Yeah.
State may.
Was everybody okay with that?
Guidelines on that.
So those are the amendments there. Then if you go to the next page, mine's highlighted, but I don't think yours is. The amendments to the building code ordinance, minimum building area. Right there.
again.
Am I,
I think we're back on page one.
Oh,
no, I was kind of going through
Oh, okay.
this packet.
This
I know we referred to the back lot size ordinance, so we're back on, it looks like this.
one.
It's,
You're on the building
What-
code ordinance?
Which
What
page
does
was
it start with,
The
lot
top of it says amendment to building code ordinance. Article 5, section F.
There's only one chief, you have to be an Indian.
Yeah, this is it.
No, this isn't it.
This one here.
Building code ordinance, no,
No, that's,
Building code ordinance.
I don't know what
It's like
it
6 pages, 7 pages in, keep going,
Keep going.
keep going, keep going,
What you see, Laura, is
Keep
not
going.
printed out.
Going,
keep going.
going.
Yeah, miss it.
One way of
Right
pointing
there.
it out.
That's it.
Thank you.
So it's got a bunch of Laura's signatures on it?
Yeah.
Maybe that helps.
Okay.
Everybody got it? Everybody there?
Yeah.
Cool.
I recognize that, Laura Lane.
So this is, again, remember when I talked about the building code ordinance and kind of people thought it went away when we adopted MUBEC because we no longer had our own building code. But there's a lot of stuff in our building code that really isn't addressed by the MUBEC. So this one was, minimum living area is 720 square feet. That also talked about mother-in-law studios. And then there's a whole section there below that about in-law studio apartments.
so can I ask, why is there a minimum living area requirement?
Because that's what the town voted on in 1987.
Would that be something that people would, be, say, more open to?
It's so you can't live in a shed.
Right, but I mean, like now there's a whole tiny home movement, which really.
There is, I think it's 400, I think it's 400 square feet now, and it's.
Actually, there's a lot of them that are less
I was gonna say,
than,
there's a lot of them that
200.
are less than 200 square feet, and people are effectively and efficiently living in that, so quite frankly, like, in my opinion anyways,
I agree, we wanted to do away with this because state law allows, and part of it is actually up until just recently, they didn't have building codes for tiny homes.
right,
Because the building codes hadn't been changed to allow for, because a lot of these tiny homes can't,
They're built as
They don't
mobile
need-
units, they're
they don't need the
essentially campers.
they don't need the structure that a regular home needs.
Right.
So therefore, but as a dwelling, if you apply all the same rules together, then a tiny home is like substandard, which it's not, so they have now their own
Effectively a
chapter.
camper.
Yeah, they have their own chapter now for it.
because
For
so
tiny
do you say, as a town, adopt more of like that sort of mentality of like, if it meets the tiny home building standards, then we will.
Well, it has to meet those.
Right.
So this is
That's a state law.
It's a state building ordinance?
For
So-
tiny.
So MUBEC, which is the building code that
Okay.
the state adopted, that everybody has to follow, not everybody, every town that's over 4,000, but we have to follow. That has its own code for tiny buildings, now, tiny homes.
And the
And we
square
can-
footage is,
I'm not sure if it actually has a square footage size.
We can access this online or go through the state
Yeah, it's an amendment that they just added to it, so I'm not. I think
amendment
it's-
to the
To the
building?
to the IBC,
Okay,
which is the International Building Code.
yeah, so we should get a copy of that, or?
I would say.
I don't think you need a copy, I mean, that's the code enforcement that just, that's what he used, that's what he uses to.
References the minimum size required by the building code.
Right.
Right.
So again, the question is do we, again, can a town have a minimum? I think they can. By law, I think they could, but again, there is a tiny home movement, so.
I was gonna say, I
What's
don't,
the thought of either doing away with it or reducing it or what?
I think realistically, like doing away with it, because I know like our generation anyway, like if the tiny home movement had been here 5 years ago, I think that may have been more the route that we would have gone. Because realistically, like it gives people the opportunity to be homeowners and not have a huge mortgage. Like,
Not Tommy.
you know what, Uncle Rob?
Tommy said, I'll live in a tiny home, where you gonna live?
Not for or against, we're just letting you know that some towns are having a problem with these tiny homes because they're using community septics that are substandard and stuff, but I'm hoping that's addressed in that.
Right, but
in
if-
state,
Community septics?
yeah, like
Yeah.
they're all pumping into a single septic.
That has to be,
Right.
I would assume,
Right.
not has to.
That's what I'm
I would assume
asking
that's
is-
part of
Yeah.
the building
That's the
code.
way I'd like to see it before I
But-
make a decision.
but what
I'd
I'm-
like to
what I'm
see what that-
saying is like,
Yeah.
if we're going with our whole like minimum 2 acre requirement lot and you have to have all your stuff, like your septic has to be so far away from your well, it has to be so far away from the line and all this stuff. Like, but you choose that your now structure that you're going to live in, instead of being this big, is this big, like that should be at the homeowner's discretion, because realistically.
But they would still be held, you're thinking, to the 2
the
acre
same
minimum
2
and to
acres,
the same
all that-
septic
all
and
Lot
the same
size,
well.
all that
and-
sort of
Same with
thing.
all that.
But I don't think that
Yeah, I don't
realistically
think
you
they
should
did.
be like, well,
You can't live in a little house.
right, if it's more feasible for you to live in a 200 square foot home, to be a homeowner and to be self-sufficient versus having a
Yeah, I
30-year
understand.
mortgage that you can't afford and you're gonna be homeless, like that sort of thing, like why would we not want people in our town to be self-sufficient?
If we do away with this, then it reverts back to the state building code anyways,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Right.
right, yeah.
So if
So
you
instead
do
of
it,
guessing what the building code is going to do every 5 or 10 years, why not just get rid of that, and then it always reverts back to the state
To the
building code?
state, yeah, that makes sense.
The state has some minimum requirements for building.
Yeah,
This
guess-
is what you were talking about, oh, go ahead.
I guess one of the problems though, and what I see Chip's goal in putting this whole thing together is to have it all in one document.
Right.
You know, have you ever tried to find the state building code?
Okay.
I have. And it's a difficult thing to come up with, so for us not to lay it out in a document, and I agree with what you said, I think that's a wonderful idea, but, it's just.
It's in a document, it's this thick.
Yeah, I know.
Right, it
So
is.
where do you find it, and
Right, but
I
at
have
the
a
same,
copy, but you have to pay $90 for it.
Well, I mean, and
we'll come to your house.
There's one here, we have it on file here, you can come and look at it.
Yeah,
yeah, if you can find it in that thick of a book,
What?
But instead
That
of
code.
having to send the citizen to that, could we just make a statement that the minimum dwelling size will conform with the current,
State building
the
code.
state building code? The code enforcement officer will always have that on file anyway.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's no different than we don't specify what your 2x4 spacings are, those are in the building code.
and if you're hiring somebody to build you a home, like they're gonna know the codes.
That's right.
Or at least they should.
They should,
That's,
right.
that's a better statement.
You still have to have a permit, so there's still a
Right,
whole
and that's the
permitting
thing,
process.
is you still have to go through that whole process, like you can't just buy a lot and just be like, oh, well, here, and plop your house on it. Like, you're going to probably hire somebody, or at least like, you have to get the permit and then get it approved, like, and make sure that whole approval process will make sure that it conforms with the state.
No, it doesn't.
I'd say get rid of that and put it.
No, it
towards the
doesn't.
state.
It's up to
Same
the
thing.
applicant,
Failure
trust
of the
that.
code enforcement officer.
I'm sorry?
I said then that would be the failure of the person giving out the permit.
No. No, we've just been through that just the other day. It's up to the person that's building to know the law.
To provide the right information.
Sorry, but that's the truth of it.
That's fine, I'm just saying, like, if you're hiring somebody, they should know the codes, and if not, like, then, again, there's a copy here,
Yeah.
come find it.
Well, I'm curious, I'm really interested to look this up, because
Okay.
my
Right.
experience with building, you know, the tiny homes, I've had friends that built them on wheels, and they kind of roll them in, and there they are.
Yeah.
It's kind of like my camper.
Yeah,
You know, I can roll my camper into my backyard, and
Agreed.
there it is. I can sleep out there if I want, you know, I can do whatever I want.
So, but what does the tiny homes have to do with an in-law apartment?
We're not there yet.
It's,
We're
we're
just
talking
above
about,
that.
Oh, okay, well, that's why it wasn't making any sense.
We're above that at the 720 square feet.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you.
so I honestly, I don't think that there's a reason to put some sort of
Is
compliance.
that the consensus here, is to try to get away with that,
Yeah.
to get rid of that and to try to comply with whatever the state law is to allow tiny homes?
Yeah.
Right. All right, let's move on. So the next area is talking about in-law studio apartments. And that came in back in 2009.
Well, that's more recent.
This, again, both of these really aren't in lot size, but they really should be. But they weren't, because they were still stuck in building code, which nobody ever looked at because they thought building code no longer applied. But this was never amended, this was never made to go away. And this was intended because you have people that were building apartment buildings to rent out rather than in-law apartments.
Yeah, they say that the in-law pass.
Or you have a garage, and you throw, you put an apartment above the garage and you rent it out. And so basically now you have two principal structures on a 2-acre lot. So that's actually what was, so that's defeating the purpose of, and so that's why they said, well, we'll allow in-law apartments. And therefore, let's define in-law, what's an in-law apartment, and that's what.
To me, I don't see how it matters at the time you have the proper septic and well, to have a place over a garage, or it's still one structure, you're still using the garage area,
Well, that's, so in-law, if it's an attached garage, there's not an issue. It's the issue is when you have a detached garage, which there's no law against having a detached garage, but when you build a big one, that you can then throw an apartment above it.
Even if it's attached, what you're doing there is you're creating a duplex.
Right.
Right.
And with a duplex.
Which is allowed, though.
You need additional property.
You need additional property, and your
This is
septic,
what you're talking, this is what you're talking about.
and your septic might not have been even designed for that additional space. But if you just say, oh, I'm just doing a game room, but it's really an apartment building that you're putting somebody in, now you're taxing this,
Right, but, so, and I guess here's my question, just for my own knowledge, so if you have a home with a detached garage with an in-law apartment, you have, say, a couple living in the in-law apartment and a couple living in the home, 4 people. Putting 4 people's, say, waste into the septic system, versus if you have that same scenario, only say there is no, it's
Just a 2-bedroom
just a
house.
2-bedroom house, but now you've got 8 people living there. Now,
Wait, what?
like say theoretically, like if you have a bunch more people living inside of a house without an in-law apartment, like is there going to be some sort of stipulation for number of people?
septics are designed by bedrooms, I believe, I'm not.
Right. It is.
But they're designed by, and that's how they figure out how many people are gonna live there. There's no law that says you can't have a house load of people staying over on couches and floors and everything else. And does that happen? Of course it does. But that's not, who's gonna police that? Who's gonna say, oh, no, you can't, we're not gonna do this. So it's not designed for long-term? And does it become long-term? I'm sure it probably does in some places. But that's not what the septic isn't designed for that. So again, whether the septic is designed for the bedrooms, whether it be
Yeah.
If you have 4 bedrooms, it's designed for however many people have 4-bedroom houses, and, I don't know, they do the math. So, but, I mean, so this was enacted in '09. Do people like it? Do people not like it? Do they want it to stay?
So this is essentially creating a situation where the in-law apartment has to be part of the house but have no separate entrance.
Yeah, I'm not really crazy about the I don't understand why the separate entrance, I mean, if there's a fire and they gotta get in there.
A separate, no, a separate identifiable front entrance.
You still would need a second entrance.
You don't mind your
Exit
mother coming
egress.
through your house, but you're not gonna get a
The
stranger
key
and rent it to
is, the
them.
key is the front entrance,
I
and that front entrance that therefore
Depends on what she looks like.
opens it up to be rented out versus being, you know what I'm saying? So basically, this is trying to prevent people from building another primary structure on a 2-acre lot and renting it out versus in-laws. That was the intent.
And it doesn't stop them from doing that, it just merely means that they have to have more land, perhaps a different septic.
They could do a duplex, or they could do it, I mean, they have to have if they had a duplex, if they're gonna build it.
Right.
Or if they're gonna just put an apartment up, they have to have enough lots, they have to have the 2 acres to be able to support that.
2.5.
Yeah, it's
Well, no, 2.5 for a duplex, if it's detached.
If it's detached, they have to have 4 acres?
2.5.
2.5.
2.5, okay,
Yeah.
right,
No, a duplex is a side-by-side.
right.
Right,
Or
If it's detached, it's 2 different homes.
right.
Even
That's
if it's
No, but the way
That's 4 acres.
Even if it's above my garage.
If it's a primary use, yeah, you have to have, so again, if it's a primary use, that's how it could be interpreted.
The primary
I'm not
use
saying
is
that's
the
not-
garage, right?
I'm not saying that's how.
The way the building code is worded is, I just had it on my phone earlier.
Is if it's,
Multiple
Principal
dwellings. No, it didn't say principal structure.
But multiple dwellings, yeah.
Multiple dwellings, you
Yeah.
have to have an additional half acre.
Half an acre.
It's not worded that you have to have an additional 2 acres.
Okay, no, so actually it was.
Multiple attached.
Okay, no, you
It's
said
saying
right.
duplex.
No,
Right.
it said
A
accessory dwellings.
duplex, I think, is still 2 acres, what's the,
No, duplex is 2.5.
Right, 2.5 acres.
I might have gotten it wrong, right.
Don't you have to have an additional 50 feet of road?
1/2 acre, duplex house must
If it's
exceed,
3.
Yes. 200.
But aren't we talking about, we're now talking about a detached?
No.
Isn't that what we're talking about?
Right, a detached
I
garage.
understand attached,
with an
but I don't
apartment
understand
over
is
it.
detached.
Correct.
I had it just a little ago.
these are, I believe, so this is, the wording here, the interpretation that's been done is, when you talk about duplex or triplex, those are attached buildings, those aren't detached. Is it clear in here? No, it's not. So I mean, one could argue be a duplex, but if you look at the term duplex, and again, we don't have definitions. So a lot of these ordinances we don't define anything.
Well,
So,
based on that, the ones that they're putting out on 202,
Here, it's right
so
here.
that's a condo, so I mean, you
Planning
could,
board.
that's, you know, planning board.
Planning board.
So how many acres do they have to have?
Size,
How many acres do they have to have? Do you remember?
20?
But that was a multifamily, whatever. Well, it's 10 units.
So-
10 units.
So this is different from what I.
here it is, right here,
That's the
Chet.
max subdivision.
It says, right under the lot size ordinance, it's talking about for each additional dwelling unit, and it doesn't say attached or unattached.
Right, but it.
The lot size dimensional requirements will be increased by half an
I
acre.
understand that.
And then it says duplex
That's an example of
house.
Duplex, what I'm saying is that the intent, when they wrote that, was duplex is a side-by-side. If you ask any construction person, a duplex is a side-by-side.
And you're
Right.
saying that
If you look in this-
detached garage, it could be perceived.
If it's a principal, so there's a difference if it's a principal structure.
Okay,
So if it's an attached garage, that's an apartment.
Yeah.
So it's an apartment, so basically now you've got two principal structures.
and would take 4 acres.
And that really should take 4 acres, because that's the design of our ordinance, is 2 acres per home. So what it's saying is, but if they're attached, so if you got duplex side by side or one above the other, it's 2.5 acres. So is it clearly written that way? No, it's not. That's partly the reasons that we're having, because then it leaves everything open to interpretation. But that's, with all the things that we find, that's kind of how it was designed, and that's why they say duplex, you know, is that's what you have. So in other words, the condo are all attached. So otherwise, it's not 2 acres per each unit, otherwise you're talking 2 acres times 10 units is 20 acres.
but aren't there 3 buildings?
There's two buildings.
There's two buildings, so it needs to have,
They met the minimum lot size.
Yep.
I just can't remember what it was.
how many apartments are in there? Isn't there 10? I mean, it doesn't even tell you in
It's
here.
10, but it's basically two,
I don't know how
there's
you
two five,
cover
two
that.
five.
Better you
I think
than
they're
me.
all 5 units.
yes.
Condos, not a.
5 acres you made them have for each?
No, 5 units, I don't know what.
5
what-
units
I don't know,
for
I don't
each
know what-
building.
So Chip, my understanding is, if you've got a duplex, 2 units, you can
Side by
have one driveway.
Yep.
For
On
that
two,
unit.
and 2.5 acres.
On 2.5 acres.
Yep.
But if they're two separated units, you have to have 4 acres and 400 feet of road frontage.
Right.
If your
Basically
garage
two
is just
individual
not,
lots.
So you'd better do,
That cannot
put a
be.
breezeway and attach it, that's what I do, you know? Sorry, but.
Well, they have to have road frontage, they're fine.
Yeah, but I can't imagine anybody do that. Why would you, if you're looking to help out your in-laws, or you're looking to do whatever, even if you're looking to put a 1-bedroom someplace to make a little bit extra in retirement, why would you take that all like that expense of subdivide your property into 2 acres and then build another complete structure? It seems like it's a rule that
I could tell you
is
one
gonna be
right now.
enforced, but I can't imagine anybody that will use it. I mean, if I had a detached garage.
Yep.
And I wanted to put an apartment above it, and you said, well, no, Bob, you can't do that, what you can do is pick that garage up and move it, 600 feet that way onto another 2 acres of land, cut the land, then build an apartment. I wouldn't do that. Would anybody?
Except
Am I
if
making-
you got in-laws, do you have in-laws? If you have in-laws, then you could do it, right?
That's like that, the house is
That's not what
over
I
here,
understand.
and
He's saying,
the
if
garage is over
it's
here.
attached to your house, you.
Way out back. The current ordinance says it has to be attached.
Right, it has to be attached.
The current ordinance says in-law apartments.
Oh, they have
Have
to
to
be.
be
Right,
attached,
that's
right.
the point I'm trying to make is,
I don't want
if you're trying to help your in-laws, you don't wanna build a whole brand new house for them.
Right.
No, I got it,
It'd
yeah.
almost be cheaper
need
for you to
to be
build a
2 acres
garage onto the
away.
house you already have, and put an apartment above it.
I mean, the design of this was to prevent people from putting up apartments above their garage and renting them out.
And renting.
I mean, that was the.
Well, they get assessed more if they had an apartment as
No,
opposed
not our way, not our way.
Not our way, they don't.
back in the day, just saying, if you had an in-law apartment, you got charged one thing, if it was a different apartment, you got charged something different.
Oh, okay.
Just saying.
Okay.
I think any
Thank you for
ordinance,
clarification.
Oh, yeah.
She should know.
we should take into consideration the changing culture. I mean, it's gonna get harder for people to take care of their elderly parents, and there's gonna be a bigger demand for people to put in these in-law apartments. And like, I know in Barrington, New Hampshire, what they did is they had that rule about the front door. No, couldn't have a front door.
Yeah.
And they had to have a door between the living area and the in-law apartment.
Right.
So they went, at one time, they wouldn't let the people have a kitchen. But instead of, I think the state over there, New Hampshire's getting tough, they ordered them to change that. So they then just put the door, you have to have a door, which makes it harder to rent. People don't want
Yeah.
somebody having free access to their place. But it still gives people that are sincerely looking for an in-law apartment to put one in, because mama doesn't care about, that much about having a door to their kid's house, a dividing door.
It seems straightforward and fair to me, not to everyone here, but that if you're gonna build another house, the rules say you have to have 2 acres and 200-foot frontage. And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about.
So what happens is, and that's fine, but when I put in an apartment, when I build a nice huge garage, monstrous garage, 3-car garage with a big spot above it, so it's basically another house, and I put another septic system in for it, and I rent it out, and on my 2 acres.
Yeah, you're building a studio apartment, basically.
I could do that I have enough land on my 2 acres, I could do that, and it's not designed for that, and so now I just put 2 principal structures on a 2-acre lot.
But you're saying you can't.
Huh?
You're saying based on our rules, you can't.
That's what, but what it's trying to do is, that's correct.
Well, it's, like Lyle said, culture's changing, say you have a kid.
But how do you prevent, what I'm saying is, that if I honestly wanted to do an in-law apartment above that garage, that was detached, why can't I?
If you don't have enough road frontage.
No, but my point is if it's a garage, and I want my in-laws to live there, and it's a detached garage, there's a lot of people that have detached garage. So how do I allow them to honestly have an in-law apartment for mom and dad, but not allow people to take advantage of that rule to build an apartment?
It's not just for mom and dad either.
The only way you could do that is to do permitting for every rental. You'd have to have permits for every rental. You have to have a permit to rent, and I don't think you're
And
gonna
that's
get
not gonna
that.
happen.
No. But that's the only way that you can.
So do you not allow detached in-law apartments? Do we keep it the way it is currently?
It's,
Gotta take care of your parents.
And your kids.
I don't think it's just the parents.
parents.
It's true.
No, I don't
No,
think it's
you're
just
right.
parents, because look at.
Like who can afford
Sometimes it's kids.
mortgage
They
now?
first get out of college,
Know what I
they
mean?
could
They get
have
married, they have a little baby, they can afford it.
$50,000 debt. A lot of them have to go back and live with mom and dad, because they can't afford their
Yeah.
own place.
My granddaughter lives with her parents. They had built her an apartment down in the cellar of their house, and
That's why I'm saying if the septic
Got a new
well
baby.
can sustain a place over a garage, to me, I don't think that's the town's business, because,
Right.
just say my son, he wants to live
Whether or
there.
not the resident is renting it to somebody
So
is
that's-
none of the town's business,
That's
I
what I
Right.
was trying to
feel.
get
I
at.
agree.
Is saying like, is, you know, if say we move back in with our parents and now we're 2 extra people on that sort of like.
Septic system.
Septic system, versus if we're the same 2 people that happen to have our own space above the garage, like, how is that any different?
You're still flushing the toilet.
so the septic system is based on, let's say, well, I'll tell you, the septic system is based on 2 bedrooms. But if you just added a 3rd bedroom, you need to increase the size of your septic
Yes,
system.
thank you, I
That's
get
what-
that, I understand
Yeah,
that.
so, well, you asked how does that work, that's
No,
how.
I
2 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms needs a
Thank you.
bigger septic.
Yep, thank you,
The
I
question
understand
here
that.
is, why did the rule get put in place in the first place?
Right,
I don't have a problem with anybody building an apartment above there to make extra income. I don't have a problem with, you know, Grammy, Grandpa, Mom and Dad.
I don't know, it was done in '09, I don't.
Yeah, but there may be a reason why. Was the town worried about expansion? That was one of the things that I was wondering tonight.
Laura, do you know?
I don't know. But I know who probably does know would be Zeke, cause he was here at the time and I think he had something to do with
Do we
it.
wanna call Zeke?
Call him in.
So.
Expert opinion.
No.
He's already frustrated with me, I'll give him a call.
I'll speak to him this.
Yeah, but
Actually,
seriously.
you'll see him before I will.
Yeah, seriously, he would be the one because he was.
Put it above the garage, that's.
So do we wanna table that one for the time being?
And that's what I said, if you're
Yes,
going to
table it.
do that, that's fine, but if the garage is
Let's
already
table that
there,
one.
Barrington.
is there a problem with putting a place above the garage?
I don't think
If there is, say
Yeah, I don't have a feeling either way.
Well, so where does the increase in septic come in though?
Well, the septic is.
So you're adding another bedroom.
So the septic's a
You wouldn't wanna live
different
above
concern.
my garage, I mean, you'd wanna put a new septic,
I don't wanna
mean, a
live
new
above
septic.
anybody's
is over-
garage.
Fine, I'm just saying, I mean, in order to do it, and if you're gonna have to do that, you're gonna have to make it livable.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is
It's
that,
an enforcement thing.
I
right,
was gonna say, and that's the.
but you have to have the law to enforce. You can't just say it's his to enforce without creating the law for him to enforce, cause he won't. If he doesn't have that ordinance in front of him guiding him, he won't
Right,
you
enforce
have
What
to
I'm
it.
get-
saying is, it's easier for him to enforce it as a dwelling if it's attached to the house as opposed to if
Detached.
it's detached.
But
Correct.
at the same point, if you're going to put in a in-law apartment, you have to get a building permit for that, which in such would turn that you have to have a septic that would be suitable for that in-law apartment.
And that's,
Does that,
So that
is that
covers
there?
well, and you bring up a good point, because back when this was done, we did not have MUBEC adopted, we had our own building code, and they may have allowed interior stuff to happen without permits. And so therefore, people were putting in apartments without getting with a building permit and things like that. I don't know that, I'm just,
Right around town, looking up, see how many garages have apartments over.
Right.
Sure, of course, yeah.
And so it's been doing it for years, so what's it hurt?
yeah. Well, I hear you, I'm just saying, this is what's currently in here.
Right, yeah.
I mean, the question is, you know, the attached and the detached have 2 different regulations. You know, if your in-law apartment is attached, that's fine. If it's detached,
Yeah.
that's where the problem comes.
But why should it be a problem? Because
It shouldn't
just
be.
say you're building a 24 by 32 garage and you're gonna put an apartment over it. Whether that's attached to the house or not attached to the house, it's still the same size building. So what's that affect?
But the issue is that what the other half of this that comes in is then why can't I build 2 homes on my 2 acre lot?
Well.
Well, why
There's
not?
a
If
difference
you put
between
it,
a home and an apartment.
I know somebody
What's
that
the
lives in
difference?
my neighborhood, that just put an apartment over their garage.
So now my cape is not, my
There's
cape is not a home, it's actually an
More
apartment.
space in that apartment.
I'm renting it out, so it's an
Over their
apartment.
garage,
What do
four
you-
bedrooms.
It's a slippery
They
slope.
have in the
Pretty sure there's a
house.
square
The house
footage
is a
thing
small
in that
house,
too.
the garage
So that's what I'm
is
saying.
huge.
That's,
You got
kids
Chip,
children
that's when you
and
refer back
stuff,
to
you
the
know.
multifamily
So-
dwelling where you have to have the front.
They have a
Let's do some
septic
research.
for small
Let's
houses.
table this one and go.
Huge
Move on.
The frontage
house
is-
over the top
The
of the
frontage and the
garage, that's also
Continue.
going in that septic,
Alright,
you know,
let's go on.
you know what I'm saying?
The bottom of that was fees, which has already been
That's where they
superseded, so that doesn't, that's an NA.
We put this one.
So now we're actually to the first
Bigger than the house.
lot size, which has a lot of that already incorporated, so I think we can go back. So we're on the last 3 pages
Wait a
now.
minute, we're back.
We gotta go to lot size.
It says lot size 2017 at the top.
There you go.
It took us a while to get there, but. Everybody there?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's okay.
So let's talk about number A, first paragraph. Any lot or parcel of land located in the town limit that will be used as a building lot shall be 2 full acres. And have not less street frontage on less than 200 feet. Are there any issues with that?
No.
So again, this is a building lot, so again, that part, that goes back to the detached, so that's a building lot, because each one is a building lot, and so, but that's where all this is kind of interconnected. Okay, next paragraph. The purpose of this section, street, shall have the same definition as set forth in the subdivision guide, public and private ways such as alleys, avenues, highways, roads, other rights of way, as well as areas of, on subdivision plans designated as rights of way for vehicle access other than driveway. So it's basically saying that the word street is road, is right of way, whatever you want to call the thing,
But it's not,
okay?
it's not.
Okay, let's-
The street in reference to
There's gonna be a big one.
the subdivision is the way you're gonna be bringing up to the standards that the town wants throughout here.
We're not there yet.
Okay.
You just
We're
sit down.
not, we're not there yet. So
We'll get there.
you're in the next paragraph is where you can jump in. So all this is saying is trying to say townwide, because what happens is, oh, this isn't a street, this is a road. This isn't a road, this is a right of way. This isn't a right of way, this is a private way. This isn't a private way, this is some other way. It's a carriageway. It's trying to play semantics, and it's saying that the word street or road, whatever you wanna say, it's all the same. It's-
So
it's
what the
an access
purpose of
road.
the,
The question, your next question is how shall they be constructed? So that's your biggest issue, is not what it's called. it's
yeah,
how-
but Chip, in this land ordinance 2017.
Yep,
For the purpose of this section, so this
Yep.
paragraph, it's saying to deem your right of way, a road, an alley, all of these different types of traveled ways are going to be used to determine the frontage for your property.
Can be held to the same standard as street,
Yep,
No, to be
Yes.
conferred as a
Yes.
street, not held to the same standard.
but it'll be held to the same standard.
because the next thing talks about
This goes
street,
on, yes.
because the next
But
section
only for
talks,
section A.
because the next section talks about street frontage.
Right.
And now understand is that this is what was written.
I realize.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily agree with how it was written, and a lot of it was written poorly. A lot of it doesn't have definitions. There was no, you go to any ordinance nowadays, they all have definitions. They'll define a lot of this stuff. It doesn't have that. So we're trying to work our way through this. The next section, I believe, is the issue that's been a bone of contention with a lot of people. Okay, and street frontage is how do you meet street frontage? So that's the key. And here it says it shall only be met if it's located along a street that meets the street design and construction standards as set forth in 12.2B of the subdivision guide, provided that private right-of-way that are not located in a subdivision need not be paved and must meet the standards for gravel surface driveways.
So where do we find,
So that's in the subdivision guide, and so
This is the section of the document that has the design criteria, you know.
okay, I don't have
where
that.
is
We
that?
don't have that.
So if you,
It's called the subdivision.
Do we have
It's
that?
called the subdivision guide, it's a subdivision ordinance, it's on the town website.
No.
This is where I got this.
Okay,
Who wrote this?
I did.
right.
Well, it's 88 pages long.
Oh, son of a.
I happen to have run off the I happen to have run off the section talking about
Good.
design criteria.
So before we can go there if we want, but I can maybe try to short circuit it a little bit.
Okay.
Because of the first meeting, there was a lot of concern,
12.2.
to put it mildly, about this particular rule
Yeah.
that was currently in place. This isn't something that we did, it was currently passed.
That's right.
So, and I keep repeating that, but I'm sorry.
Nobody's listening, nobody's listening.
I'm listening. I can do more.
And Lyle had brought up another town that does something a little different. And so when he did that, I then looked at that town, I looked at a bunch of other towns, because I had never looked at this section when I was trying to come up with the land use ordinance to do, I never even went there. Cause I basically was trying to keep everything as close to what it was as possible. So I never even, I must have looked at 10 or 15 different towns, the different ways of doing it, some. So so in one of the other handouts,
This one,
there's
right
a
here.
non-subdivision.
Oh, this one,
Yep.
yeah,
Non-subdivision.
Private right-of-way road standards.
okay.
So
Forgot we were.
what I came across, and you'll, the last page actually has what the actual standards are, so it's a table, which makes it fairly simple to take a look. So again, I wasn't gonna refer to anything, I was gonna put whatever the table is right there, I'm not gonna refer to some other, I'll just put it right there so everybody can see it. But the issue, the factors that I found in these other towns were, one, all the towns required a 50-foot right-of-way. Because the reason they did a 50-foot right-of-way is because the road that's only for one house eventually becomes for two houses, eventually becomes for three houses, eventually becomes for 10 houses down over the age. And if you only say, oh, you only need a 12-foot right-of-way, well, now you got a whole development down there with only a 12-foot right-of-way.
And no land.
And no land, and now you gotta try to get land. So, the 50-foot right-of-way, all the towns do. What they vary is the travel width. And so that's what that last table, and so the compromise that I'm proposing is that 1 to 2 houses, the travel width is only 12 feet wide with 1 foot shoulders. And you'll see that then you go up to 3 to 4 dwelling units, it becomes a 16-foot wide travel with 2 foot shoulders, and then 5+ dwelling units, it becomes a 20-foot traveled way with 3 foot shoulders. And essentially, the entire road needs to be done to that specification, not just the 200 feet in front of that new property. That's the way our current ordinances are written, is your road frontage needs to meet the specs. It doesn't say the entire road, our current thing says your road frontage. So you could live on a 1 mile private way, then you're gonna have to bring up your 200 feet in front of your house to the specs, which is stupid.
Alright, so I got a question for you.
So there's several other things, let me just, and then we can go through these.
Yeah.
Safety was a big issue, so we talked about turnarounds. Subdivisions on dead ends are required to put hammerheads or Ts or cul-de-sacs for turnarounds. I didn't do that in here, I said you need to have a way an emergency vehicle can get turned around and just get approval from the fire chief. I mean, I try to make it as simple as possible, because that's the bottom line is, if you're a long driveway, they gotta be able to turn around, because they gotta face out, they can't be facing in. Because all of a sudden if it's a forest fire, whatever fire, they gotta be able to get out of there, and that's the problem. One thing that's not in here, but one of our other chiefs had asked, depending on how long the driveway is, he was concerned because some of our longer trucks can't get in. The turning radius to get into that driveway or that road, that private way, if it's only 12 feet wide, and you're not required to maintain the rest of it, so it could all be trees until it's more developed. But even if it's for one lot, it could be 1,000 feet long. It could be a back lot way back. How do you get the fire truck down there if they can't turn in? So I'd like to maybe put in something, whether it be the first 50 feet, if longer than X, the first 50 feet has to be so wide so that, a long truck can swing.
Yes, because none of our trucks are even very long. If this town grew and got a larger
So
truck,
again, I don't, but that's a concern I have, is to be able to get a long truck or any kind of a truck that can get in because 12 feet isn't very wide to get that, for that turning radius, and depending on what the road is. And so that may depend upon the road as well. Some roads may be pretty wide, so there's plenty of room for them to swing in. Other roads might be narrower, where there's really very little maneuverability.
You don't want too much turning on the center road, you'll be in a 4-foot ditch.
So,
At your point there,
Driveway though.
even a long driveway, you have a driveway that's 300 feet
There
long.
are long driveways on the center.
Right, so that's
I understand,
my
but driveway
question
won't be
is,
held to the standard.
the difference between a driveway and a right of way? What? I don't know.
huh?
What's the difference between?
Well, a driveway has frontage, so you already have frontage.
Yes, but if you have 200 feet of lot frontage, and you have 1,000 feet back, and your lot opens up, and you put your house in the back. Your driveway only has to be wide enough to get the car down.
Right,
Yep,
because it's a single family,
yep.
one lot.
Yeah.
Right.
If I have a right of way, so there's a front lot.
Well, the question
I have a
becomes
right of
if
way
you wanna-
through that
if you
to
wanna
my back house,
divide it
what's the
off to
difference?
give to your child, if you wanna divide it.
Don't point to me and say
second
child.
lot-
No, he was pointing-
I was pointing to Bob over there.
Oh, thank you.
Second lot that you wanna give to your child, now you've gotta have a right of way, and there's gotta be 200 feet of frontage on that right of way for the second lot.
Right.
But the question is, does that have to have a driveway to it?
No,
Or
it's
does it
gotta have,
a road?
it's gotta have a
Is
road,
what, the second lot?
The second lot.
The back lot?
has to have a
Has to have
road,
a road, yeah.
has to have a street.
But he built his house all the way back to begin with. He's got a driveway, goes all the way back there, he's 1,000 feet back.
But he's 1,000 feet back from what? The road. He already has road frontage.
Okay,
The second
so,
house would have the frontage, no?
But
So if
only
he
moved the
subdivided
driveway
that-
to his house.
Well, that's his, yeah, I mean, well, that's.
So then he decides he's gonna give his son,
The issue-
Bob,
The front lot.
No, the
front
issue,
lot.
the issue is that because he has to have frontage, it's all about frontage. You can have whatever kind of driveway
But I
you want.
see what
You can
they're
have-
saying.
You can have a driveway that snakes through all over the place.
If
but it can be-
he owns the front lot and the back lot, and he puts his house on the back lot, and he's using that frontage
correct.
to build his house, and then he gives away, or sells, or whatever,
Or
the front
subdivides.
lot,
Does he
he
then have to
no longer
redevelop his
has
road?
that frontage that was included in that front lot,
So if he, well, one, how does he get access to his,
the right of way, the driveway.
and is that a right of way
Yeah,
Yeah,
that you own?
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's
well, it's a
owned,
driveway.
right-of-ways are owned by both sides. Just because you have a right-of-way, well, the new ones, I'm sorry. I was gonna say. I just had my amended about 4 years ago because of that. Right-of-way is owned by, in my case, is owned by both parties on either side, as well as the person in the back. So that way there, at 60 feet or whatever, it meets that requirement.
Well, right, I mean, again, the things that we deal with currently, so a lot of this is old stuff, but the things that, and old right of ways is tough. I mean, I deal with even somebody that says, their deed never says who owns the right of way. They don't own it. And so all of a sudden now, they're down here and they're blocked, Cemetery Road.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden now they can't get access to the property because somebody wants to, and it's not in their deed. I mean, those are the things that we deal with, and they want the town to do something, which the town can't. I mean, it's all private stuff, so that's where a lot of these right-of-ways being listed, being marked out, some of them don't tell you how wide. It's just a right-of-way. I got a right-of-way through there, okay, is it 10 feet wide, is it 2 feet wide, is it 50 feet wide, nobody.
Again, we're talking about
I don't think
years ago, anything over the last 10, 15 years.
So, but that's one of the reasons, so that's why a lot of towns, they don't let right-of-ways split in the middle of lots for that reason, because all of a sudden.
who
Yeah,
maintains the right of way at that?
Well, the thing is you have problems, or the person's lot that it goes through, they decide to block it off. It's going through my property. And so you have all sorts of, so you try to do it on the edge of lots to make it so that you reduce those problems, and that's what we try to do going forward. Can't help in the past, but we do all that because of all the stuff that we're asked to bring in, so.
But understand, the reason we're here particularly, and I think some others too, is because we've taken into consideration what you've done, we've gone ahead and maintained, we've decided, we've agreed, we've had deeds written up that this is the right of way. You put your driveway in there, expecting that eventually, if you want to, you can develop that back part, because you have a road to it as far as you're concerned. They made you call your driveway a road. We talked about this last time, not you. The state said 911, you have to call this, boom, this is what you call it. So it's a road now, it's on maps as road, but then when I go to ask to go ahead and subdivide the two back properties, you go, it's not a road. Well, why is it not a road? Well, it doesn't meet the standards of 18 inches of gravel, 3 foot, I understand, and that's what we're here to change. But that's the kind of changes we have to make. We have to decide whether, going forward, if someone puts a subdivision in, here's a question I'd like to ask before I leave here in the next 10, 12 weeks. Why isn't the town taking over these subdivisions if they're bringing up the standards, if they're paying taxes? If I develop my road to the point where, because I'm gonna sell my back lot, it's town standards, I'm gonna get one price for it. Okay, it's gonna be worth this amount of money. If the town maintains it, it's gonna bump that price up a little bit more.
Exactly.
But you're also gonna get more tax money out of that as time goes on.
So let me answer one of your questions.
Okay.
Because you just said that.
Okay.
If you have a house that's on a private road versus a house that's on a publicly maintained road, there's a price difference.
Correct.
Okay, therefore, and if everything, all else being equal, the public road will probably be a little bit more higher value.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the difference that they're taxed on. So the person that's on the private way isn't paying more taxes to be plowed, they're actually paying less because they live on a non-town maintained road, because their value is lower.
But they're plowing it.
No, the value of the.
But their value, the property value is lower, thereby their taxes are lower.
You're saying when you assess our properties, you're assessing them lower?
What I'm saying is, if I want to increase my road, if I wanna say, you know what, I'm gonna spend the 21 grand that's been told to bring my, up to standard, I'm gonna have it tarred, I'm gonna make it a town road. You, as the town, not you, the town, should accept that and maintain it. I spent the money, and you're gonna value my property.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay.
Personally, I don't disagree with you. But right now, there's an ordinance that says it has to be accepted by the people.
You have to vote.
So it has to be up to specs for us to even put it on the ballot. Then once it's on the ballot, the people have to vote on it.
Okay, so flip the coin on this. I agree with what you just said, that's the point of what I've made. I don't wanna bring my road up to standard, okay? I wanna leave it just the way it is, I don't mind plowing it, or in this case, Tommy plows it. I don't wanna plow it. If I have a culvert that's washed out, we'll take care of that, or Jim will take care of that, and Tommy's my nephew.
Thanks, Tommy.
If we find that water's running through it and we need to pull up a shoulder, we'll put a shoulder in. I do that, the town does it. And when I sell a house, if I sell a house, the person buying the house is gonna know that. They're gonna know that. They're not gonna come down to you and bang on the desk and go, hey, you're supposed to plow my road because it'll be in the deed that I give.
Actually, they will.
They'll say, why aren't you sanding it? Nobody's taking care of my road.
And what I'm saying, if you accept it as the town road and say, hey, bring it up to standard, bring it up to exactly the standards we have for all our roads, tar it, do everything else, we'll start doing that. However, be aware that your house was worth $350, we're probably gonna figure it at $375 or $380, and you're gonna pay tax on that for the next umpteen years. That would be the why I don't do it. The 21,000 probably has a lot to do with it too, but also the value of the house for the people that are gonna buy a house like mine or a house like they want is they like the rural aspect of it. They don't really want to have a big plow come up truck in the middle of the wood to take care of that. I don't mind the smaller trucks that come through. You know, it's just the way we take care of things here in town.
Okay, so then.
But the new developments?
So then.
People that are buying those new houses for $250,000, $300,000 and these big dupes, they're people moving into town that are used to having those kind of services, and they don't mind paying for them.
And they don't know enough to ask whether or not they have them.
I got a couple of questions.
So I guess the question is what do you wanna do on this? I'm trying to keep us back on track and on topic.
Well, I got a couple comments, Chip.
Okay.
Say like I buy a lot down Mayflower Lane.
Okay.
You know where it is?
Nope.
Up in Lord's
Got a
Road.
map, yeah.
Way out, you're like 3 miles in from Long Swamp.
What is it, off,
I know where you are.
Lord's Road. You go Long Swamp,
Long
Lord's
Swamp,
Road,
Lord.
bang a right and.
Yeah. Okay, I know where you are.
So if I buy a lot out there and I put 200 foot of frontage in front of the lot.
Yep.
Do you really think that a fire truck's gonna get down there in the wintertime? Or in the summertime, wintertime, spring?
Forget it.
So what are we accomplishing by making somebody put 200 feet of gravel in front of their lot on a place like that?
From what I can understand from this, Chris, is they would have to update all of the road up into
3 miles.
Yes.
It's like 3 miles.
Yeah.
And it's already like, I don't know, last time I was down there, it was like a dozen houses already down there.
Well, there's a grandfather
Yeah,
part,
grandfather.
the part, that would be the question part, is that how do you grandfather something like that?
Yeah.
Right, so what I'm saying is, what's the
I don't
200 feet
know.
gonna accomplish when you can't even get into the 200 feet?
Cause you'd have to do the whole way in.
According to this, you'd have to do the whole way in.
And they said, yeah, Bob, you have to do the 200 feet in front of the,
Right.
you wanna subdivide, and I go, there's another 800 feet to get to that 200
Exactly.
feet. You don't care if that's a mud pit?
Right.
The answer was no, we didn't. I mean, not that they wanted to say that, but based on the rules, that's what it was, and that run way
Well,
up.
so
That's my question, is why should we?
But the question is, and then, so how do you grandfather? How do you, because I know that the purpose of what they were trying to do when they did this on lot size 17, whether they did it incorrectly or whatever, was to try to provide some standard travel distances and because you may do a good road because you wanna be able to travel on it, but it doesn't mean everybody else doesn't. And so your right of way may be great for the fire truck to get down to because you care. But somebody else's right of way is a little cart path with trees running up through it that you barely have to, and then people sell it. And so that's where we run into problems here, and so we're trying to, and that's why towns, and I looked all over the place, and there's some that don't do this, the NFPA, so the National Fire Protection, 20-foot width, that's what they say. So we don't adopt that, but that's what they say for fire.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But for smaller lots, we say 12, so they're trying to standardize it, but again, you give an example, 3 miles down, 1 mile down.
Right,
Okay,
so-
now I wanna develop that, an extra lot for 200 feet of frontage, I gotta now make them do the entire road? Is that fair?
Up to the 200
So
feet.
Or just the 200 feet?
No, I'm saying that if he's selling off the front lot, you're gonna do that first 200 feet. If he's gonna sell off the second lot, you're gonna do the 400 feet.
Right.
So on and so on. If you're gonna buy a lot in the middle, you're gonna be paying a lot for a road based on the way the rules are now.
What I'm saying, you're 3 miles in from the main road.
Right.
That 3 miles ain't maintained by.
But are you
town.
buying it on that road though? Or are you
On what
buying
road?
it off of that road?
Off of what? Mayflower Lane, it's a private road.
So you're buying a property on that?
I'm just using that for an example. I got plenty of headaches where I am.
No, but what I'm saying, is the road already there?
Mayflower Lane.
Right.
Is the road already there?
Yes,
And
that
you're
Mayflower
buying a piece
Lane.
of property?
Yes.
Well, you're already on the road, so you don't have to do anything.
It's a private way.
But you already have road frontage. It's the new stuff that you have to.
I know, and
It's
I know what
already
you're saying. That's not what the rule is.
And so our current rule is saying that 200 feet, 200 feet of that frontage of your new lot had to be up to specs.
Okay, I got another.
I think what he's trying to get at though is like saying you're 3 miles in, right? And you're on this private lane, and then there's this extra lot out here that now you're going to have to meet this spec. So now you drive 3 miles down this carriage path, right? But now then it's going to have to open up into a nice wide opening of like to meet this because it's a new construction. So I think that's what you're trying to get at is saying like
Right.
it's a carriage path for 3 miles, and we don't care that for 3 miles.
And that's what
nobody can get
that's what
through.
this currently says you have to do.
Right.
And that doesn't
Right,
make any sense.
but that doesn't make any
We changed
sense.
that.
I don't disagree.
Okay, I got a question, another question, Chip.
That's why we're changing.
This is enacted right now, right?
No, it's not.
The new one, the new ordinance that was 2017.
2017.
Yes.
Exactly.
So you need a 20-foot road,
Yep,
right?
travel width, yep.
200 foot.
50 foot right away, 20-foot road, yep.
Okay, so how are they building houses on Baker Grant Road with like an 8-foot road?
Baker Grant's 8-foot road?
Baker Grant, Charlie Tuono's old field, they got 2 houses going in there, one's on the main road, the other one's a second lot, which they just slapped up, is like
I don't know, I'd have to,
Or how would you go about building
so
on,
how would you get a building permit if that road ain't up to spec?
I don't know.
Now, how'd you get it subdivided?
Yeah.
Right, so
I
that
can't
was
even
my question.
subdivide it without bringing my road.
Well, that's what I'm saying, how do you get, you know, we're talking about, you need this to get a
I
building permit.
don't know, but I mean, we could bring up examples all over town, that's not gonna help us
Well,
go
those are
forward.
Current example would be.
I just wanted to address one thing at a time at the entrance.
We should.
For most towns that we build in, the majority of them, you get a building permit, and you have to go to the road commissioner before you go to the building inspector.
To get a driveway permit, that's
Get
what
a
we have to do
driveway
here.
permit, and it's, some towns, like, most of them are over 20 feet. So, you know, you've got this opening, and then like, I know in Berwick, because we do a lot down there, they come out and inspect it. In fact, they put it in. They make you pay them to put the culvert in and the width of the driveway. And then, I mean, that turns it over to the town, basically the town road commissioner. And that seems to work for most towns.
But they make that driveway width
Yes,
fairly big to allow.
yes, yeah, the culvert.
Just the entrance.
Just
Yeah, just the entrance is
The
good.
town owns in 10 feet anyways, right?
But how do they
Well,
know?
right, that's because you're crossing over the town's way.
Yeah.
Is why you have to have that permit, is why you have to have a driveway permit.
So Chip, are you suggesting that we replace what was in the subdivision regulations as defined the street right of ways
Replace that section in.
with this,
With
which is
something along those lines.
a little bit more lenient? So we're gonna be changing the subdivision regulations.
No.
No, this is
I'm changing the
non-subdivision.
lot size ordinance, 2017, that section that talked about roads.
To this.
With that.
Which is non-subdivision.
So I am not, or something similar to that, it's not
Non-subdivision.
referring to subdivision.
Oh, so we're gonna get rid of the language saying refer to the subdivision regulations.
Right, and replace it with this.
And I'm also trying to make it easier, instead of referring them to something else, they could see it right there.
It'll be right included in that,
Well, this seems
So
reasonable.
one of the questions that was brought up the first time was
kinda.
when we talked about subdividing. We were told that just the act of subdividing required bringing the lot or the road up to code. And this, I think, and I was just scanning it, I haven't read the whole thing, are we now proposing that you don't need to bring the road, the road up to code until you actually put a structure on that property? So you can subdivide.
So
what would-
subdivide meaning subdivision regulations, I get, because I get,
2 acres off the back, the Homestead Act.
so it's just splitting off a lot,
Yeah.
not subdividing, because again,
Two different.
they're
So
interchangeable,
This would be
but.
tied to a building permit as opposed to, right,
So,
registering,
if you had a,
registering it in.
Steve, because I've just gone through this with somebody else. I don't know. You can.
Dawn, you're wrecking the
put it all you
place.
want, But he will not give you a building permit until that right of way is.
Meets town
to these
Right,
specs
Glenn, you're
right
saying
now.
he'll let you subdivide.
Yeah, you have the right to sell anything you want.
We were told we had to
And the
bring.
town has got
subdivided.
their right not to
That's
give
not
you
what we
a
were
building
told.
permit if you don't meet the town standards. But you have a right to sell
Yeah,
your
well,
property.
That's why I was just saying, like, that law to make it right, within 2 weeks, they put a house up.
Until we brought the road
Brought the
up.
road up to standard.
Then they won't give you
I
a
don't
building
think,
permit.
yeah, I think he might have, I'm not saying, I wasn't there, I don't know, I mean, that, to me, that sounds, I mean, again, you could do whatever you want with your land, you could
That's
sell
what we
it.
thought. But,
You might not be able
So I
to
think
build
the
on it.
He may have misinterpreted that, he's not gonna, if you wanna do that and get a building permit, you're not gonna get a building permit.
exactly, it
until-
makes sense to.
No, I think they did say that it's illegal if you divide off
Homestead
a
Act.
lot before that road is built. I think Steve did say it was illegal. And so,
I'm not so sure.
so he was
Right on that,
basic,
but-
yeah, I
Well,
don't
he
know.
might have, because he might have said that all the lots need to have frontage, and if you're dividing,
We have frontage.
if you're splitting off a lot that doesn't have frontage,
We're not.
then that may be what he's interpreting. I don't wanna put words in his mouth or
I think
speak for
he-
him.
As I understood it that night,
Huh?
if he was here, he could correct me if I was wrong, but what I heard, what I thought he said was, okay, you have the 2 acres, you have the frontage, but the road is not up to the standards, which was 18 inch of gravel, 3-foot shoulder.
So that I can
50
see why
feet
he wouldn't
across,
give you,
but he was
why he
talking about the
wouldn't, I
right
can
of
see
way.
why he wouldn't give you a building permit for that, because
That's
the
why
road.
you
We're not building,
We're not building, we're only subdividing.
we're not
But
building.
they can-
We're
they
actually
can
just taking
put
2
it
acres off the
They're
back.
breaking a lot out of
Of the
their.
family.
Yeah, I don't.
That's what I'm saying, that what you and Liz did down there behind your office, what he's interpreted was said that you couldn't do that, because you can't break them two lots off, because you don't have a right of way in front of it.
Right.
Well, yeah, but Steve, I talked to Steve about that, right, you're right.
That's
Yeah.
the only thing the only difference is, you can do that, but they won't give you a building permit.
Correct,
You can
we don't
still-
want to build a building.
That's
We
it.
actually were doing that for privacy for my,
Exactly.
for my.
Right, we wanted to.
We didn't want to build an in-law apartment, we just wanted some privacy.
We wanted to insulate her a little bit.
The only thing, I like what you did here, Chip.
Yeah.
And because it really takes into
Insulate her from
consideration
the
of a lot of parcels in town. But what I don't like is if I have a lot, okay, let's say hypothetical, it's on a right of way, 50-foot right of way. And I wanna build at the very front of that lot. It isn't cost effective for me to have to build the whole 200 feet if I'm not gonna use it, it's my land, But if if I wanna put another lot down, I have to go 200 more feet to get to wherever the driveway. I don't think the driveway is on the first 50 feet of the lot. I don't think, as long as you have the 200 feet on the
So here's something
roadway,
that was recently done in one of
it's
the
totally ridiculous to spend that extra money when you don't have it.
So here's
It's like
something,
people
here's something
with
to
the smaller
consider,
houses.
it probably doesn't help, but
They went like this.
So you could put a T in there, which is a turnaround T, and use the 50 feet of each side of that T as your 200 feet.
Yeah.
Trust me, it was done.
And no,
Wait.
But,
Wow, that, interesting.
But there's exceptions to
so
everything.
that would be a turnaround, that would basically be your turnaround, and you have 50 feet of frontage on that right of way. So, or you do a hammerhead, which is basically you go in and then you have a little strip across here. And as long as you're bordering, you have a long enough of that round for 200 feet, that's your 200 feet.
so for every law you make,
It's
you
a
That's what
have
was- that
somebody
was
that
done. I'm not
figures
saying
out how
that's
to abuse
a lot of times,
that,
yeah.
abuse it.
Straight line, yes.
Really basically abuse it.
So I mean,
It's a
again,
good chunk of change to go, an extra
to go an extra 200 feet, yeah, I
If
hear
you're
you.
only gonna go,
I
if
hear
you've
you.
got driveways coming off on the first 50, for someone to spend that extra money, they can put a well in.
So here's my question, I guess, and I guess this is where it relates more to us in our situation. So in our deed, it says it is a 12-foot right-of-way through our property. That's what is deeded into our
For
property.
access for the back
access
lots.
into the back lots. There are three houses, so there are 3 houses. As time progressed, the berm along that right-of-way on our property
Was pushed
was
back.
pushed back. So now that driveway, right of way, is now significantly wider. However, it is only deeded for 12 feet.
Planks and nails.
But,
First
so,
thing, get me in trouble.
so now, if say somebody, our deed says 12 feet, they have a 12-foot right of way. This is prior to this whole ordinance going in, right? So we are grandfathered in because we have, what our deed says is 12-foot right of way through our
Yep.
property, right? So now, say there are 3 houses back there, say somebody back there wants to subdivide off a piece of property. So now it's at 4 homes back there. So now, under the new ordinances, we have to have 3 to 4 dwellings. It's a 16-foot with 2 foot on either side. So that's what, 22 feet?
So they can't
20
beat
feet?
that.
20 feet.
Right, it's 20 feet. So now, my deeded property that says 12-foot right-of-way is now required to have 20 feet of right-of-way.
No.
No, because
No.
it's registered as 12.
It's registered as 12
Okay.
feet, they can't meet that, so they can't do it.
So again, the right of way is a right of way. I mean, if it says 12 feet, it's 12 feet. So then they would have to go reach out to you and get you to sell or whatever a right of way. To sell them to increase that right of way. Or they can't meet the.
But they can't, because then they wouldn't have 2 acres, which they already don't have 2 acres.
Yeah, in order for them to put a road there, they'd have to buy an extra 8 feet from you.
But they can't because they only have 2 acre lot.
I was gonna say,
I know,
that's,
that's
we
what
already
she's
have
trying
a
to
2 acre
say.
lot, and the
That's what she's
12-foot right-of-way.
Basically, the back
And
lot.
so that, in and of itself, would make her lot non-conforming, which you're not allowed to do.
Right, and it are,
So
I can
therefore,
tell you right
basically, that
now.
would be a growth, again, half of a lot of this stuff is enforcement, half of it is because.
I wouldn't want that job.
I was gonna say, because I can already tell you that it's already not conforming, because what they took as their 12-foot right of way, their driveway doesn't even start until after the 12-foot right of way. And it's already that wide, so.
Tommy, I got some planks and some nails if you need it.
Well, I got a builder's and I'll put it back 12 feet.
There you go.
So let's get back to the roads as far as, what do we want, do we wanna replace what's there? I'm assuming that was a yes.
Oh, absolutely.
The place what's there is fine because it doesn't make any sense.
But how do we what do we wanna replace it with?
Well, I think what you brought forward here was something we can talk about. Some of the dimensions seem a little bit.
But it has to,
You take a big jump when you go to 3,
It's on that thing.
you go to 3 and then 4 to 5. You basically, once you get to 5 on the road, you're talking about what you're looking at anyways, but now you make them do the whole road.
That's right.
right,
Okay.
And the last time you were here, you said you didn't have an issue with that because that also limits growth.
Again, we get back to what I originally said. If you're gonna make them come up to this standard, which
Yeah,
is
do
the
the town.
standard, why isn't the town gonna?
But it's not
accept it?
paved.
If it's paved,
The town
should accept it.
maintains
If I'm
unpaved
gonna put
roads.
$21,000 and develop my road, I'm gonna pay the
I
extra
don't
$10.
disagree, but that's up to the voters. But I mean, I don't disagree with you.
If the town
It's in the ordinance.
if the town is up to specs and paved,
Right.
But this isn't requiring it to be paved. So you're saying that we should be requiring this to be paved then?
Chip, the town already maintains roads that are
You're
unpaved.
saying if it's paved,
Yes,
the
that's
town
right.
will maintain it.
Because they've accepted.
And also, if you're
accepting.
saying that it's a subdivided
Bog Road.
lot,
Bog Road,
then it's
Lower Guinea
going to
Road.
have to be conforming to.
But they're not
the
Lower
standard.
Guinea was supposed to be paved. It's just not anymore.
So my point is that
it must have been a town road, they never discontinued it.
Right.
It
Right,
must have been an old town road. Just like Hersham Lane was an old town road, they never discontinued it, so they still maintain it, they still plow it and whatnot, and that's only, well, it's not very wide, we'll leave it at that.
Same with Hersham Lane, same way.
So essentially,
Yeah.
now correct me if I'm wrong here, is that what we're proposing is saying like, well, you essentially, if you have 5 or more dwellings, so if our family is pretty large and obnoxious sometimes, but if we all choose to live in the same area, say if we wanted to subdivide and have a subdivision or whatever, like.
So if you wanna have a
by
subdivision,
state
3 or more,
standards-
it goes to the planning board and none of this applies.
Exactly.
Right.
That's right.
Right, but I'm saying 5 or more.
If it's a subdivision, doing it from scratch, it goes to the planning board, none of this applies.
Right, but okay, say Uncle Rob, there are
He's not your uncle anymore.
No, he's divorced too.
He just told me.
There are 3 houses on that right now, and say we wanted to do 2 more because say like we wanted to move in and then our cousins wanted to move in, right? Now you're saying that it has to conform to what the town is saying is a road, but the town may not accept it as a road. It has to be up to those standards, but the town can just be like, oh, well, don't, you know.
So,
can vote
so
against
the reason
But
that.
you have to call it a road or a lane.
So the
That's
reason that there's
fine.
road standards,
Okay.
the reason why there's road standards, and the reason why it's 5 or more, is because now you have a bunch of residents, and it's highly unlikely that's gonna stay all within the family for forever.
right.
And so therefore, you have a bunch of residents, and they want it, we have to provide fire and safety. And so if I have a rickety old road, that creates problems, so that's why we're trying to get some standards in there for fire and safety. But we're also trying to say, that's why this is a compromise. So a lot of towns don't compromise. A lot of towns go 20 feet, that's it, done. But there are some towns that compromise.
Are we gonna go in and fix all the roads that are in lanes and whatever that are grandfathered in?
Are we gonna,
No, I say
Mayflower
grandfather.
are you
Road?
gonna pay for it?
Yeah.
They're
No,
grandfathered.
but that's what I'm asking, is say.
But we're gonna be moving sooner than you think if things keep going the way they're going anyway.
Piece of property, now we're gonna have to pay for
So
it for that whole
the
3
problem,
miles?
so what everybody seems to understand is that if you're trying to change something, you have to start somewhere. We can always say, but what about this, and what about that one, and what about this one? And if we say that, then we never change, and nothing will ever get better, and maybe that's what everybody wants. Is it to be the old lawless Lebanon and you can do whatever you want, but we're the ones that deal with all the complaints because of all that.
You're talking about future expansion. I understand that, and you're trying to develop the town for future expansion. But you're seeming to do it on the backs of the people that have already built their roads and things like that. You take my road probably's got 8 to 10 inches of gravel in it. It's, last time we looked, about maybe 16 feet across. Probably the smallest part of it is 12 to 14, goes way back. I don't have much of a shoulder all the way, got 4 feet on one side, but not much in the back, mostly just flat. We make sure there's no water on it, it's run off, degraded right and stuff like that. If I decide to put a home down there based on the rules you have now, I've got to put 200 feet and finish it back, which doesn't make any sense to me, it hasn't been from the beginning. Now you're saying, okay, if we take this on, I'll be good if I build there, but if Beth and her cousin, the obnoxious one, I guess you're talking about, not me, decide to build a road off that family land again, now we're up to 3 people, actually be 4 people on that road. We're gonna have to bring it up to what the town standard is now, which is 15 or 18 inches of gravel, 2 to 3 feet on each side, 20 feet across, 50 feet right away.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, again, you're making it on the backs of the families that have been here all the time.
It's just hard to figure out, from a family perspective, it's hard to figure out with land that has been in the family for over 50 years.
But now
and that we're trying to figure out as a family how we keep it, right? There and as fields, and when you add that extra cost of putting in a 2,000-foot road.
Yeah. So I have a question, are you also gonna write in the deed for those other things that they can never sell it outside the family? Ever? Never?
That's been tried.
If you.
Because that's the problem.
Because that's the problem, is
But the road's already there, I mean, if you buy it, you know.
You've accepted it as a road, why not use it as a road? Now, I build something off that road, I decide to put another road in there, because we're gonna build her cousin, and his cousins back there, okay,
Except for that doesn't happen.
That road should be brought up to standard.
Except for that it doesn't happen, because I know, I sit in these meetings and I see people, and it really honestly, their patience is beyond. Because I see people on some of these private roads and there's 16 houses in on a private road, and they're in here saying like, go down there and look at my road, there's like potholes that'll sink up your car. The town doesn't own that road, it doesn't maintain it, there's no reason for them. There's 16 houses in, but there's supposed to be this association that never developed. And here's all these people that have these houses that came in on this nice flat gravel road, but now there's potholes literally the size your truck will fall into it.
I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying somebody bought a house on a road, 16
houses in.
Okay. When they bought it, they realized the town didn't maintain that road.
No, they probably.
Why didn't they?
So that's it.
No, not me.
Well, then,
not me.
Why are we letting people come in here whine about them making a bad mistake?
So that's exactly
I made bad mistakes in here.
So
could I come in here and whine at you? I didn't know.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Wow, you're in it. More hot this time, I'll tell you right now.
Is a no whining ordinance.
Hey!
Bob,
let's write that up.
We're gonna start a crying club, and you're gonna go buy some tires for everybody.
I do not want to be the person they whine to.
Alright, we're having too much fun. Alright, we're having too much fun here.
I guess the thing that my question is that like we're proposing that we have to bring these rights of way up to town codes. And so if you're that person that's buying 3 miles in and you are okay with it being a private road, and like that's what you're looking for is a private road that if it's 12 feet wide, like that's cool. Like that's the reason you're buying back there. And now you're going to have to be the one responsible solely to bring that whole section up to.
The issue that you have is, and it's an age-old issue. If I want to buy a piece of property and do whatever I want with it, who's to tell me that I can't do what I want with it?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the age-old question that happens to everybody, because all of this stuff, all these ordinances that tell you what you can and cannot do with your piece of property fly in the face of. It's my property, I bought it, why can't I do with it? Who says I can't build here 25 feet from this road? Why can't I? It's my property. That happens, it's an age-old thing. And towns try to get some conformity because of neighbors, because of safety, a bunch of different reasons. Some towns just like to control. again, it's just, but a lot of it is for safety and because things happen. Because people come to the town to say, fix this or do this. So while you own it, it's fine. But then somebody else owns it and you could say,
Sell it to
I
him.
agree. You could say, well, they're the ones who bought it. I totally agree with you. A lot of people like to take their own responsibility for what they buy. They don't look at the deed.
It's true.
I have people that look at the deed that says, it's supposed to be a homeowners association. Do you think they asked the question, hey, where's the homeowners association? They didn't ask.
So
Come and yell at us about it.
So I hear you, but and so I can't change that part,
Chip.
but, yeah.
On this new proposal or the substitutions that you're proposing, the last item said that if there is multiple houses, then a maintenance agreement needs to be formed and recorded.
Right, and again, that's, I mean, I throw that in there, but that's.
Enforce, we can say you're going to do that, but who's going to
Enforce, so you
ensure
can't.
that it's there, and who's going to ensure that it's registered?
But if it's
So you
recorded with the
can't.
registry of deeds, you can see, you get a stamp from the registry of deeds that is there. Okay, and what all that does is it's there, and so.
Gives them a little bit more protection.
There's people can say, hey, there's an agreement that says here, rather than no agreement at all.
If they do.
That doesn't have to be
Right,
there, that's something I
If they do
saw.
it, because it's not tied to the code enforcement officer
No.
signing off
No.
on the building permit
No.
when the house is complete.
No.
No,
I mean, I
no,
think
so if you even have a
I
thing
think
that
he would
says you
wanna
have
see the
to.
deed, he would wanna see that it's filed with the registry, and that's it. Whether it's enforced, whether the neighbors or the parties actually do it, I mean, that's
So
up to
that would
them.
be tied to the occupancy
That's
permit.
tied,
No,
no,
Well,
no.
what,
that's
whether,
what I'm saying, with that being in there, I just don't know how unless we're
How do
asking
we
Steve to
enforce it?
verify that there is in fact a maintenance agreement recorded.
But that's actually a civil
well,
action.
it's a tour.
If they're not paying, if you have an association, you got 20 families in it, okay? And everybody's supposed to pay $50, let's say, to keep the road plowed. Well, these two on the front are going, why are we gonna pay? Because they gotta plow that road anyway, so they're not paying, you can't come to the town for that.
I
It's a
totally
civil-
get
it's
that,
civil.
but I'm saying that why are we putting it in our ordinance if we have no mechanism to
Right, for
enforce it?
enforcing.
Right.
So all we can enforce is that it's there.
And that's what I'm saying, who's going to enforce that it's there?
How do you enforce
You're
it?
not
And
going
you
to
enforce
enforce,
that it's there because you get a copy from the registry that's stamped as from the registry, so it's there, it's like
what
you
is
can
it
get a
tied
deed.
to though, there has to be.
Well, the other,
when
it's like Deb was saying, the other
I
home,
mean, I would tie it to the second building permit.
What's
Because again,
that?
well, you have to, it's 2 or more homes. So once you get 2 or more homes on that too, the second one, so the first one, it's not tied to because you only have 1 home.
Why wouldn't it be tied to them though? Because they would be equally as responsible as the second or the third.
It's already pre-existing.
They're saying it's tied to.
Oh, so it's when you already have one home there and then you're adding
Another one
one.
behind
Yeah,
it.
the agreement could say, look, you're buying the second house, so you have to maintain the road.
Right?
Could say that, I'm
Yeah,
not saying
and then
it
the
will,
third-
it could say that.
Yeah,
And it doesn't matter, we're not saying what the maintenance says, it could say anything you want, I mean, it's just the fact that it's there, because a lot of people, we have problems. Again, I got this from another town, but towns I'm sure have problems about, well, who maintains it? And there's nothing ever written anywhere, and so it's always pointing fingers, and then this at
Well,
least.
even when it's written, people have a hard time, because someone's gotta be in charge.
But at least this maintenance agreement provides them a little bit of extra help. They still have to do it on their own, the town can't get involved, but at least it provides.
I don't, and I may be being real naive here, but I can't believe that someone would buy a house, or a bank for that matter, would lend you $350,000 house in one of these developments
Me either.
and not have something, you know, nobody wants to put that kind of money forward without knowing who's gonna plow the driveway, who's gonna take care of the road.
You're naive.
I guess I am.
It happens.
Laura, would you weigh in on this? A lot of what banks won't.
I agree.
A lot of banks won't. They won't lend on a private road. Won't lend on a private road.
Without an agreement.
So, the town doesn't have to get involved in this, is what I'm sort of
They
saying.
shouldn't.
And as far as the gentleman,
That's when they come in to see us, so
I
somebody's
understand,
buying
I
and saying,
understand.
we don't have an agreement, we
Chris
can't
is
get a
gonna
bank
start
loan.
running the crying
Yeah.
crowd. That's it. He tried to pass the buck, but it's going to him. What I'm saying is.
There's no crying crowd here, buddy, I know what you're doing.
What I'm trying to say.
You don't know me, do you, Bob?
No, evidently not well enough, Chris.
No.
What I'm trying to say is that it seems that the town is trying to cater to the people that the one that has the right of way, I mean, the right of way that goes like this, and you're worried about it getting a fire truck down, stuff like that.
Who are we catering to? I don't.
Well, that seems to be who you're catering to. To the person, by making sure the road is a standard for the fire truck to get through. You know, you made this big thing last time, trust me, I went through and walked by lane thinking, okay, can a fire truck get through here or not? Because if my house burns, I want the damn fire truck to be there.
But who, I mean, I guess my point is, who, you saying we're catering to some people, who are we catering to?
You're trying to.
Residents?
You're trying to, yeah, the residents,
Okay.
the resident that has the path that's a mud pit and a fire truck can never
I'm
get
not
through.
catering to him.
Well, you sort
No,
of, you're
he's
trying to
trying-
make him do.
Not catering to.
Not catering to him, he's trying to make,
Chip, I understand what you're
is
trying
that
to
guy
do.
with the mud
The
pit?
township's done
He's
this.
trying to sell
We're
the
trying to
mud pit.
manage.
I disagree with that.
And now Beth bought that house and now she's, you know what I mean? They're trying to make everything conforming.
Can I ask a question here? Is there a plan then if, like, I understand that all these ordinances are like to go from moving from here forward. Is there a plan, like you said yourself, Chip, that you're concerned with the safety and being able to get fire trucks and everything down. Like, I understand, there's a large percentage of this town that will be grandfathered because it's here before this is, so are we going to try to go through and say, well, like, if you're, like, a fire truck couldn't get down through here, so we're gonna require you to make it wider.
No, you can't do
No,
that.
you can't do that. It's already existing, it's already there.
These changes would take place for transitions of ownership.
Effective date or whatever this got passed.
Which is what I was trying to say, I should have used the word mandate. We're mandating that people in the future aren't foolish.
Right.
But the people that are being foolish now, with their own safety, it's not, you know, they're not hurting anyone else but themselves.
Yeah.
We're not putting that in place. So I don't think we can worry about the future so much and not look toward the past, or at least take that into consideration. It's my land, I do think I should be able to do with it. I maintain it the way I want it. I make sure that a fire truck can get down there. If I don't, then it's sort of my fault. They're not gonna be, Chris certainly isn't gonna cry if my house burns down, I can tell you that right now.
No, I won't.
But, and I'll be there to bring a beer, but.
No, I brought the gas can.
Say that.
Not
But you know, there's,
Okay, I brought the diesel.
For whatever reason, they allow that brush and whatever to encroach on it, and their right of way gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I know, cause I plow those driveways of those old people all winter long. And you have to get down there, and then you're calling the fire department, can somebody come down here and trim these trees, because I can't even get down there.
This is not addressing
So,
that.
yeah, it is, because, so here's the thing. They can't come down and fix it, that person has to fix it. So if it's mandated and you have to maintain that wide enough for a fire truck to get down there, then that's what it's gotta be.
It wouldn't be on.
That's an existing road, that
That's what-
doesn't even apply here.
Yeah,
It's an existing road.
It's an existing
grandfathered,
road,
so it
that's
does
what
not
I'm saying.
apply.
But now, what
So now
I'm
that's
saying
where
is
the
that's
grandfathered
getting, there that is, and now you go down there, and that's where I was going with this, you go down there and you buy that. You have the right to expect safety from your fire department. You have the right to expect that as a homeowner
I
and
also have the
taxpayer.
responsibility of knowing what I'm buying.
Right.
That's
And the
right,
responsibility
but
of
that-
maintaining your property.
But it's not her property,
If
it's
your
the
road's only
road.
If she
12
got
feet,
it, it
Especially in
your
a
trees
town
gonna
that
be
doesn't
taller
have
than
any
12
city
feet.
services.
So you get snow on, and they're gonna be going across the road.
But what I'm saying is that if you bought down there and something burned, and you didn't get the services, cause they can't get the fire truck down there, you're gonna be in here screaming that they couldn't get the fire truck.
It's your responsibility when you buy the house to make
Yeah, that's true, but that's not what you
If
mean,
that's something
I don't
that's
know.
right away and you're too lazy to make sure it doesn't overgrow, then
Okay, what are we doing next?
Yeah, maybe we get back on track here, that would be great.
This committee.
Trying.
Get out of
Sometimes
here.
it's not like,
Brian.
really honestly, it's.
All right, what do we wanna what do we wanna, we could talk about roads all night, we could do this next week, we could talk about roads again. What do you want, where do we wanna go with this road issue?
Well, I think this is a great compromise.
Yeah, let's look at that.
I like that.
But I would like to.
That's very good.
I think we, you know, I
I
think
think
we
it's a
should.
good job to look at.
So you wanna just
Great.
take this home and look at it and for
Yeah,
next
we
meeting?
should. At the
Yeah.
next meeting,
Okay.
we should have.
I think you did a good job on it.
Right.
To digest it.
Let's see where we can go here. Let's see, so that means we're at B then, multifamily dwellings.
Oh. Be on what? Oh,
On
no.
2016.
Okay, I got you.
Oh, Jesus.
That wasn't enacted by the previous board.
For each additional dwelling unit, the lot size dimension requirement shall increase, so we kind of already talked about this.
Right.
I think that's.
So what do people think? This has been interpreted as like a duplex, which is a side by side, not a separate dwelling, it's
Attached.
Or
that they're
over and
attached or
above.
above or whatever, but they're all one unit.
Right, so like an apartment
Same thing
house.
as multifamily, like condos is a multifamily 5. So, is it correct to interpret that we shouldn't have 2 principal dwellings on a 2-acre lot?
I agree with
Do
that.
people agree with that?
But I think we need to change this language.
We'll have to change the language to show that,
For
yes.
each attached additional whatever, yes.
But my thought is, Chip,
I'm just trying to understand, make sure that I'm interpreting it what people want, and then we could try to change the language
Can I just
to
ask,
match that.
multifamily dwellings, to me, doesn't say somebody with like an in-law apartment. Multifamily dwelling says to me like an apartment house, like it has.
This is nothing.
Right, but
This is
that's what I'm
attached.
asking you. This is
Attached.
multifamily dwellings. This is like an apartment house, whether they're side by side or up and
It's
down.
a
or-
townhouse, it's side, you can have a townhouse that's side by side. I mean, a lot of them are side by side, you could have 2-story.
Or like townhouses.
Or one building has 2-story apartments, I mean, it's a, we could call it a duplex, that could be a duplex.
why should,
You
okay,
keep saying duplex.
say my house is 28 by 40, okay?
Okay,
That's gonna be on 2 acres.
okay.
Say I'm building a duplex that's 28 by 40. Why should you have to have an extra half acre for that building? Because it's the same exact building.
2 driveways, maybe?
Because it's 2 families,
Well,
so, and you
it's the
could
same size
have,
building.
yeah, but it's 2 families.
That's-
2 families, so
You
that's,
just have 2 families
that's what
in
they,
your house.
that's what they did.
What's that?
You can just have 2 families live in your house, you won't have to have the extra half acre.
That's what they did, they required an extra half an acre.
No, I'm just saying why though, because it's the same size building.
So my guess is 1, is 2 families. 2, your septic system may have to be larger,
Okay, but it still fit on 2 acres.
and you might have separate septics.
Especially for a duplex where one
You got
owns
2
one
units,
and
you
one
have
owns
separate,
the other.
I mean, and that would be
Separate.
smart to have
2
2,
driveways, 2 sheds,
you could have 2
2 garages
different,
possibly.
Yeah,
you could have 2 wells.
well, especially if you're doing a duplex, they should be
I
separate,
don't know how you.
because they're owned separately.
Can I ask, maybe for the next meeting, would
I'm
it be
just wondering.
possible to get like a list of definitions of like
Well,
what,
that's already in the ordinance.
of like what we want, like everything to like
definition?
dictate? Definitions? Like,
Definitions.
like about all this, we're saying, okay, what is a duplex, what is it this, what is it that, like,
So that would be part of it, again, I mean, a duplex, you can pull up a dictionary and it will tell you.
right, but
That's-
like, okay, so you're proposing making all the ordinances in one place so that it's easier for people to look at it and understand, correct?
Yep.
So why wouldn't you take the extra
It's in the
week
back.
to put, yeah, but do you see,
So
a
the-
breakdown of what
the-
like a duplex is, what?
So there was a full list
Right.
of like a 10, 20-page list of
Right here.
definitions
Yeah,
in the land use. It was
Yeah.
already there.
Right here. It's all
Yeah,
there.
this is in,
But that's the one you don't have.
That's
Yeah.
what
this
you don't
was
have.
in
This is the new.
Chip's original,
It was a draft.
land use ordinance. That's one of the nice
That's-
parts about it, is that
Is that
Different
the
everything is
definition
described?
page.
That's not this document, it's
Okay.
a different one.
Already
That's the
there.
proposed new
That's
document.
the one's tabled.
Yeah, right.
okay, I'm sorry, that was not available like right here.
Well, this was, it was
was.
2 meetings ago.
Came to talk.
When you were.
Okay.
That was half,
Just pass
that's
that
half
to
the
me.
problem with most of the ordinances in this town, is they do not have definitions. If you go to most other towns, every ordinance has a section that
Or the
says
definitions change.
to define different things,
Or the definitions change depending on who wrote the ordinance.
right? So the premise, I think, is okay, it's just, we probably need to do better on the wording, so that'd be, okay. We already talked about C. And nobody had really felt either way, so with that, it might very well just stay. So then we're on number 2, distance of structures from boundary setbacks. Basically 50 feet front and 25 sides, all 3 sides. Anybody have any issues with that?
No, that's what it is.
Any street right of way.
Right, that's where the issue lies.
I think some right of ways are 60 feet.
Huh?
No, used to be.
No, it says, what it
50 feet from
says,
the right of way.
50
Used to be
feet from the
60.
edge of the,
Used to be
No.
60.
From any street
Mine
right of way,
says
what that
60
means is if you're on a corner lot,
From the right
you have
of
to be
way.
50 feet on both sides.
Is that old?
okay, what about a right of way that runs through your
Because
property?
it's 50.
It used to be 60 and they changed it to
Are you from your,
Mine's
are you from your boundary line?
or are you from the edge of the
So
right of way?
your setbacks are from your boundary lines.
Okay,
So that
but-
right away doesn't matter then.
this, it says any street.
And again, setbacks are done from your boundary lines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's standard throughout the state, because of law,
Okay.
on how it's defined.
Well, our building,
Okay,
Right, it says
our code
Right of way.
our code inspector was very unhelpful with this.
well, again, that's because currently, nothing's defined.
Okay.
That's half the problem, but again, you've got a right of way that goes right through your lot, so you have to
Yes.
understand is that you're unique. Okay, it's not, in other words, it's not,
That's unique.
it's not, huh?
It's not that
Well,
Unique.
it may not be unique to Lebanon, but those are older versus newer lots where they're along the edge of the boundaries. So let the lot clear, then coming right through the middle of it, and then, so yeah, where do you build, or where do you have to have a setback from that right of way? I don't think this really identifies that the town ordinances do.
Your right of way goes right through the middle of your property?
No, it goes along the
On
edge.
the edge.
But it's,
Okay.
it takes away from the usability of that.
Right, so that's that.
But
That's the question is like.
but you have property, I thought you had property on both sides.
Well, the way they put the right of way in versus how it's deeded, yes.
So should we add or boundary line?
Well, the boundary line is if you go to the definitions, and one of the other handouts I did actually talks about definitions, a bunch of them that I pulled up, and on how you do, because there's been a question about how do you determine your 50-foot front setback. Okay, and it was recently talked about, it was from the road. I looked at a lot of towns, and actually it's not from the road, it's from your boundary lines. It's from your.
That's how it
from
should
your-
be written, I think.
It's how, and it's, so, in a lot of cases, it is also the edge of the road, but the strict wording is, it's your property line.
So on this, where we're
That's how it
saying
should
right
be.
of way, should we change that to 50 feet from the boundary line?
Yeah.
Because like,
50 feet from the front boundary line.
because like your right of way,
Yeah.
you own that.
Yes.
So yours should be from the stone wall or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Should be your 50 feet.
Not necessarily, stone wall is not necessarily always the boundary line.
No, I'm saying his property line. But your neighbor, say your neighbor that's using that right of way, that should be 50 feet from the right of way.
But if you have a right of way through your property, because normally right of ways, it's like private ways, are not part of your property, and you're saying that yours is.
It's deeded part of the property,
It's deeded
yes.
part of our property.
And so, arguably then, if it was a 50-foot right of way, then you could put a shed right in the middle of your right of way.
Yeah. That's what we're wondering, is because like our right of way does not go down, it is not on our line. It is set off of our line.
But you said, but deeded, where is it deeded?
It's deeded to go 12 feet from the boundary line.
Right.
And then there's
but
a
in-
12-foot along the boundary line.
Is the deeded right of way, but in reality, that is not anywhere near where they put their driveway.
Again, reality doesn't matter, it's deed, it's all.
It's deed, so-
Yeah,
Right.
they only have access to that 12 feet.
Right, it's a line.
If you allow access to the rest, well, then that's your problem. I'm just saying, so, but even that really, and so if you were 2 acres, including that, one, that was probably done incorrectly, it should have been excluding that, but we can't change that.
Here nor there.
We can't change that now, and so, and that's why this is about property lines, so I wouldn't wanna change that. You would then therefore wanna get a variance, okay, because again, if you wanna put something, so your 20, for that's a side setback, I believe.
Yep.
Would be that side setback, I mean, cause that's not your front setback.
No, so we should probably reword this for
Yeah.
50 feet on any.
Front boundary line
From
And
any front
25
boundary line.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that it's, so again, this is trying to cover if you're on a corner. If I'm on the corner of Merchants and Jim Grant, two public roads, I need to be 50 feet away from both of those. That's what it's designed for.
What if one of those was a 50-foot private right of way?
Yeah.
Again, it's supposed to be 50 feet setback from the road. And that's from the road for all sorts of different
Except
reasons,
for
whether
that
it be
there's
plowing
no
or
way to
whatever.
determine where the
You know what I'm
road
saying?
ends.
Huh?
There's no way to determine where the road.
But it's
ends.
supposed to be 50 feet away from your boundary line, which is.
Well, then
on-
that's what it needs to say is the boundary.
Right,
Right.
That's what I read.
Not the road right of way
Right, so
or
we
whatever
need to
it
change
says
it.
now.
Yeah, so that's what needs to be
That
changed.
does need to be changed.
So that the wording can be changed, I'm just
Yes.
trying to get the meat of it, the 50
Yes.
feet
Yeah.
From the boundary line.
from the boundary line,
Yeah.
50 feet setback, front setback, or
Right,
from a right of way, is it still from it's still the 50 feet is from a road right of way. That's what whether it be your frontage, if you only have one road, that's your front. If you're on a
Yep.
corner lot, it's on both sides, and it's 50 feet in from that,
That's what it says here.
okay? It's measured.
Street
it's-
right of way.
And that's the street right of way, it's measured from your boundary line, so that's where we would have, how is it measured? The 50 feet is measured from your property
From
line.
your
So
boundary line.
is street as defined in this section, in the new draft that we're,
right, and I think it's more the verbiage, because it's more open to interpretation, we say the
Yes.
street right of way, because then we're saying, okay, is our 12-foot wide right of way considered a street, or is that considered a private right of way, versus if you were to say.
Well, the issue is
like-
that you can't, that's the problem, is that when you have, otherwise you have all these restrictions for a carriage path, private right of way,
yes,
whatever right of way, 12 foot, so I
where
mean, you
this
can't.
says any street right of way. So, our property's on West Lebanon Road, and then Furbish Lane goes down the side, that's the right of way, private right of way.
Yep. And so this would include that, this would be, you have to be 50 feet away from that, if you're on the corner of that in West Lebanon, you have to be 50 feet away from both.
Each.
So we have to be 50 feet away from Purvis Lane, the 12-foot right of way that goes to our property.
Yeah.
But they own for.
But we
But I
own Furbish
own that
Lane.
road,
That's
or
their driveway.
that driveway, as it were.
Yeah, so that's the thing, so that is
But
the,
it's not a driveway, because it's not a driveway, it's not a driveway,
Private road,
it's a private road, because you just talked about the three
It's
little
a-
houses behind that.
right,
Yeah,
and it
it's
has
a-
a name.
it's a right of
Private
way
right of way,
Yeah, which is a private right of way is the same as a private road, no
that
different,
we own.
no different.
But the people behind you,
You can call
As
it,
to it.
you can call it different, but it's really no different.
Yeah, when you have a right of way, that'd be like, remember when my driveway, Tom, you don't remember, Tom, you remember when I drive one up the back? And your grandfather built out the back? Well, that wasn't the right of way, the right of way is where it is now.
yeah,
That would be me like saying, no, I own that right of way. And your grandfather goes,
Then-
well, no, you don't, it's a right of way, I can go right through that.
Deeded
Deeded
my
as part of
property.
our 2 acres.
Right, they are using your property, but that's because it's a right of way, not you, but the original owner said, okay, you can use that as a right of way.
And they put that in their deed.
Right.
So then when you got it, it was in your deed. You had to, like we were just
accept it.
saying, you accepted that as part of your deed. So you can't go back now and say, you can't use it, cause when you got that property, it was part of your deed.
I'm not saying they
Right.
can't use it. What I'm trying to define here is where my property line is and where the setbacks
And
come
where
from.
the setbacks come from.
Right, because,
Correct.
and that's,
So it would come from your
Because that is
property
part of my
border.
2 acres.
I say, that is part of what is.
And again,
calculated
what you're
into
saying is somewhat unique, because where setbacks are supposed to be measured from property lines,
Right.
but your property line is essentially on the other side of the road,
Yeah.
where is 50 feet?
Right, that's what they're
Correct.
asking, that's what
And
they're
so
asking.
it's.
Where's 50
instead
feet,
your
or do I
50
use 25
Your
feet
50
then?
feet is really only 38 feet from the road, because it's a 12-foot right of way.
So he's saying you'd include the right of way,
Right,
the right of way would be part of that 50 feet.
because you own
This is
it.
side, this is
You own
not
it, though.
even there.
Yeah, I would argue that it's from the boundary line and the original.
And then it would be 25 feet.
Right, which,
Well, no,
which is your side boundary.
it's a street right of way, so it's 50
Gotta be
feet from
50.
both. But the 50 feet is measured from your property line. And if your property line is really on the other side,
Now he's saying it's a road, not a
Let's say
right
now,
of way.
it's the
right,
same, but
50 feet.
it's all the same thing.
you're contradicting yourself.
It's
though,
for
because
Bush
you
Lane.
said-
No,
Yes.
how many,
Because earlier you
How
said
do you
if it's a private road that was agreed upon, if it's your property that was deeded to, it's 12 foot, it's essentially a driveway, whatever, like 25
It's not a driveway, I
feet.
never said it was a driveway.
You had said they were using it for a driveway, and I think he was working off of that premise. But you're talking about an established lane. It has a
Yes.
name. It's on the maps. It's on the 911 thing. That's Furbush Lane.
And that's a street.
So that's a street.
Right of way.
It's a street.
Whether you wanna call it a right of way, a private road, whatever you wanna call it.
Yeah, it's not like a-
It's just still a street right of way. You have to be 50 feet away. Now, how do you measure the 50 feet? 50 feet is measured from the property lines. Your property lines happen to be on the other side of the road. So if I was doing it, I think you could make a case that your 50 feet starts at your property lines, goes 50 feet, and so it's really 38 feet
That's not how
from the
this
edge of
is-
the road.
Right,
That's not
this
That's
says,
not how that's worded. This is worded.
I wouldn't
Because
find that.
50 unique,
I would
you're not
50
supposed,
feet
your
from
right of way is
right
not
of way.
supposed to be on
This
your
is not
property.
going to, and no matter what we write, it's not going to address.
Fix
I
everybody.
understand.
It's not gonna
We have to
fix
go with the
everything.
80-20 rule,
Right.
right?
How
We
do you
have to-
think?
we have to
Right,
try to
Tommy,
look
what
at
it is say you're right away,
Yep.
say the lot beside,
After what
on the
we
other
said,
side of your rock
I
wall,
would say.
they have to be 50 feet from that rock wall, because that's their
Because
property.
their property line is there, they've gotta be 50 feet from that. If they were on the other side and then also bordered West Lebanon, I
Yep.
don't know your property, but if they were that, they'd have to be 50 feet from both. You have to be 50 feet from your property line, but that
No.
really only makes you 38 from the road, it's 12 feet.
Right.
Not even 38 from the road.
Well,
No,
how
I'm
would,
just saying 50,
You understand,
50
Tom?
minus 12.
Yeah.
before you say that, how would legal have instructed us, in light of what we just went through, where they would say 50 feet from the street right of way, which is part of your building code, 50 feet from the street right of way. So the
be from
street
the
right
edge
of
of the
way is
right of way.
Furbush Road.
Essentially, I can build.
So it's not
on the edge of
38
Furbush
feet
Lane.
from that, it's 50 feet from that.
But you own the right of way,
Yes.
so it's your land, so it'd be from the stone
Again.
wall in.
Perfect,
Setbacks are measured from your property lines.
Okay.
sweet, so if it's right on the edge of.
That is-
Maybe my rock here, I don't know.
how it reads.
That is not how it
It's
reads.
not how it reads, but that's okay.
50 feet from the right of way.
Right, but what
So
I'm-
it doesn't matter where the right of way is.
So I'm not gonna argue on how it's worded, because it may very well be worded incorrectly.
Well, that's what I'm saying. is-
Well, so if we're fixing it.
What I'm
let's
trying to
fix it.
say is that when I looked at it, you can look at one of the handouts. I had sent out another one, which was a bunch of definitions,
Definition.
this definitions here and stuff.
From
If you look through
Kennybunk
here, well, there's a bunch of different towns.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, from Gorham, Kennebunkport, Scarborough. Just, all of them will tell you that right setbacks are measured from the property line.
Okay, so we're agreed that when we put this new ordinance in place, that'll be clear.
So we would make that clear, whether it be in this language or in the definitions, how they're measured.
So it won't say any longer from the street right away, it will say from the property border.
Property boundary.
But again, you have to have street frontage. So we have a 50.
So you require.
We have a 50-foot setback from the street right of way. If we don't say street, then what is the 50 feet setback from?
You just said from the front property border,
But on what side?
the front
Street
property
frontage.
border.
No, the street.
Which
So
is
it's,
less than.
so what I'm saying is that you say 50, the setback is 50 feet from the street right of way measured from the property
Okay, that
boundary.
makes sense. That's
If you
exactly
have-
what it needs to
And the
say.
challenge is if you have two streets bordering
Then
your
it's
property.
50 on both sides.
Then it's 50 on both sides.
Right,
Yes.
Measured from the
From-
property lines. Because essentially what happens is that if you look at all sorts of plans, you have property line here, everything in the middle, that's the road. That might be 50 feet, that might be 60 feet, that might be 40 feet, but
correct.
that's the road. And so if you ask somebody, well, measure from the side of the road, where's the side of the road? Especially if it's a dirt road, where's the edge? They don't know. So that's why it's measured from the property line.
And when he's talking about road, he's not talking about the actual road, he's talking about where the definition.
The road right of way.
Which is the right of way, the entire right of way, that's correct. And that's what also happens when you say road, and they go from the edge of the pavement instead of from the entire right of way.
Are all roads in this town 50 feet?
No.
No,
Hell no, there's a couple,
No.
like 12.
There's, they actually used to be 60 at one point, and then they changed the standard to 50, which is 49 and a half, which is the 3 rods.
Right.
That's the right of way.
Are you talking about, Glenn, were you talking about actual roads
Now,
or?
3-rod
Right.
roads.
So all
Are
roads,
some roads 2 rods, or some roads are 3 rods?
yes, and some are probably even 4 rods. Because, and some are no rods, and because there are, if you don't have boundaries, a lot of times. If you don't have any, boundaries, a lot of times it'll get
Those
rock
with the
walls.
road when they established
It was the old farm,
okay.
the farms bordered it, and it was a rock wall, that ends up being the edge. But that's why your property line, if you go to your deed, that rock wall is your property line. So that's where it's measured from.
Yeah, 10 Rock Road, yeah.
So, alright, where we at? Structure.
Structures.
Any structures, mobile homes, trailers will be placed on a building lot must be approved by the building inspector and a permit obtained. Anybody have an issue with that?
No, we agreed to that the first time.
Okay. Water supply, plumbing and sewage, any building lot must have water supply, sewage, and plumbing that will comply with state and local requirements, blah, 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 blah. Pretty simple.
I hate to ask,
No, ask.
on the number 3, the structure,
Where am I?
the first time we talked, the whole idea of having to get a building permit for a doghouse came
So, yeah, well, the thing is that they actually say, so I looked all over the place, I mean, it's probably, almost every single town in the state says structures, and the other reason is that, because you know what the definition of a building is? Same thing. It can house animals, it can house this, it can house that, that's considered a building. So basically, the argument about a birdhouse, I mean, I gotta get a permit for a birdhouse, well, a birdhouse houses a bird, that's an animal.
Yeah.
So, we could play, and so that's why it's the big common sense rule, I mean, he's not gonna charge you to do a birdhouse. And the primary reason for this is for location. And one could say, well, why? If they locate it within the setbacks, then he just goes out and tells them to move it. Well then, isn't it a lot easier just to say, before they build it, to tell them, no, you can't build it there, you gotta build it 25 feet back? Him having to go out and tell people they gotta keep moving their sheds?
Right, but I think we need to establish a size, because like, if you wanna build a 5x5 shed, like, do you really have to go get a permit to?
Yeah.
So if I wanna put a doghouse outside, I have to go get a permit.
It's considered a building, and any building requires a permit. And so if you wanna put your doghouse at 1 foot away from your neighbor, you're not, depending on how big of a doghouse, yeah, you're not allowed to, that's within the setback.
So that's why she said establish a size. You just said depending on the size of the doghouse, but.
Well, no, I mean, depending on, it's a building, and so that's why I'm saying is that towns don't play the game of sizes, because it's just anything needs a permit. You come in and see him, if it's a 2x2 doghouse, as long as it's not next to your neighbor, he's not gonna, he makes it go away. Because he doesn't wanna bother with it.
Right.
It's not worth the paperwork.
I mean, so my point is that's, but if you say, well, you don't need it for this size and you don't need it for that size, before you know it, you have all this stuff that's going along the border of other people's property. And within the setbacks, and there's no way to control that. And now you want him to instead go out and do touring to trying to find all the violations in town. He doesn't have enough time.
So Chip,
It's still
I'm gonna
not
jump
gonna
forward a little bit here.
And that's actually currently the ordinance
Take a
already.
passage out of
Right.
the different
That's the
part
ordinance.
on the non-conforming lots. F,
Where,
non-conforming lots F,
okay.
on the very end of that,
Yeah.
says,
Get there.
page 3 of 3, it says, new accessory detached structures with ground coverage of 144 square feet or less, built on a non-conforming recorded lot, provided the building complies with all applicable dimensions.
Yeah. Okay, why are we skipping ahead?
So we've got a definition of a size here.
144.
For building.
For a building.
Yeah,
144 square feet.
okay.
That's building on a non-conforming lot,
Yep,
right? So it's not gonna meet setbacks.
no, it says complies with all applicable dimensional requirements or setbacks.
Okay. Alright,
So, we'll get to non-conforming though in a minute. So, so water supply, plumbing and sewer, are you okay with structure, so we?
Yeah, I just asked because.
I thought if the building was under 200 square feet, you don't need a permit.
So the building size by code, they talk about if it's a small enough building, they're not worried about structure. They're not worried about it supporting and make sure it's all got the structure. So that part, they don't really worry about on the code. There's still the issue about where it's placed. And we have setbacks. So under the building code itself, it's not necessarily required because it's a small building. They're not worried about structural loads and all that kind of stuff. But we still require it because we don't want that 10 by 10 shed right on the boundary line because it violates setbacks. Or right on the front boundary line, it violates setbacks.
With a pig farmer running it.
So that's,
He hates his neighbor. It happens in Lebanon.
Do you blame him? Do you blame him?
Bacon, by the law. What's the matter with you?
It happens here.
so, water supply, plumbing and sewage is pretty straightforward. Location of wells, we already talked about that. So now we're at non-conforming lots. I kind of want to skip that because what I did is non-conforming lots, we have shoreline zoning that's done by the state. They have a whole non-conforming lot section that I basically just used in place of this. So that basically everything is conforming, go figure. Everything is the same, it's consistent. So non-conforming lots basically allows you to, if it gets torn down, if it gets burned down, you can build in place. Not a problem. You take footprint.
I saw.
The issue is that if you wanna demo it down, then you have to do best reasonable location. So it's always trying to get best conformance as we can. So so if you already have a non-conforming lot, you can fix it, you can do that kind of stuff. And a lot of this language is actually very, very similar to what's in the shoreline zoning. So a lot of this doesn't change. I just literally cut and pasted out of the shoreline zoning and plopped it in here. But a lot of this really.
Because a non-conforming lot is the same on the waterfront as it is off the waterfront, as it is on the river.
Than whether they're on the waterfront or they're out here, so you might as well be consistent across all of that. You still have to meet setbacks, again, you have setbacks, so that was one of, we had a non-conforming up across. They still have to meet setbacks, they just don't have to meet the 2 acres. So, but the setbacks makes it really, really tight for them. But if they did meet setbacks, but they were non-conforming, they can stay right on the same footprint, okay, as they were before. They're allowed to do that.
Because it was an existing.
Because it was an existing structure. If there is I believe, and don't quote me on this, again, I vary into his range, but I believe if it's a non-conforming from prior to 73, then it does not have to meet the 2 acre requirement.
Because that lot being as small as it did without a house on it.
Even with a house on it.
Could have not met any of the setbacks.
No.
Right. Yep. Okay. So that's that, and then administration and enforcement is the same. Does not. I had a couple other things for that on handouts that I gave. So we had non-subdivision, which we already went through. I had a section here about multiple principal structures on one lot. So a lot of times I found this from, I think this was from Topsom. So some towns will require, because we just talked about it, we don't think you should have 2 of them, but do we require people to go ahead and split their lot before they do that? Again, family, you got a big thing, you wanna put a house in back, do we require you to go ahead and split that off now? And so what this is saying is, no, you don't. As long as you have the dimensional requirements, the acreage, you can put that there, you just have to show a plan on how you would split it down the road. Again, if you wanted to sell it, how that would be split off, but you don't have to do the split. So you can keep that under you still have to have the acreage to do that.
And road frontage.
So you still have to have 4 acres.
You still have to have all the other requirements, you still have to do, it just basically says that you have to show how you could split the lot up to make it conforming to 2 acres.
So on a 2 acre lot, according to this, you wouldn't be able to put a detached garage on it?
Yes, that's an accessory structure.
You just can't put a mother-in-law's apartment above it.
It's accessories, a garage is accessory to the primary use, principal use. Principal use is you have a single family dwelling. So you can have as many sheds on it as you want, you can have as many garages as you want. But if you're gonna put an apartment over a garage, that's another principal structure.
So then you'd need 4 acres.
And then that's why you need the 4 acres. Okay, and that's why they did the mother-in-law with an attached garage, and, you know, again, I mean, I don't, but that's the purpose of that, is that's its principal structure. An in-law apartment isn't principal. I don't consider that principal, I mean, it's, and that's kinda how they did that, so. So that's, I mean, again, that's not in anything there, I just happened to find this. This wasn't even in the one that I proposed earlier. But I did find this, and this is less. So before, we were actually requiring them to split that off to create that 2 acres or whatever, where this would not require that. And again, that's more for families that have a bigger piece of property, they wanna split it off and let their kids be on it, but they still retain ownership of it. The other, trying to think what else I provided, I had the definitions, right, you have that? And then I had, so the definitions you can look through. Then I had this minor variance from dimensional standards. So the law allows us to grant the appeals board to allow a lesser threshold for granting a variance for dimensional variances that are basically within 20% of what's required. So let me give an example. I have a piece of property that got divided up, and when they did the 2 acres, they did it to the center of the road. But in actuality, the pins were on the edge of the road. So their 2 acres has now become 1.97 acres. By our property, by our law, by our thing, they can't build. 1.97. Where do you draw the line? 2 acres. So this would allow them, right now, if you do a variance for the appeals board, you have to show no reasonable use. You could argue that they have no reasonable use, but there's plenty of case law that a path down to the waterfront is reasonable use. There's lots of different reasonable uses out there. So what this talks about is if the threshold is lowered, you don't have that as a requirement anymore. You have a financial hardship requirement, and that's pretty much the hardest requirement to, and so then it would allow them 20%. So 2 acres, they could be 20% less than that, and they could grant it. Setbacks, instead of 50, we just had one, I think the lady was 46. That's within 50 feet, 20% is 10 feet. So if they're between 40 and 50, they could grant that. And this would have been a financial hardship, so it would have been a perfect variance for them, because we have this where these, in this town, so it allows them some latitude to do that instead of always having to say no. But the state law says it has to be in an ordinance. So right now, we don't have that. But I think that provides them a little bit more latitude to do that with some of these cases that we see for all sorts of different reasons, and it's predominantly because of past practices. Now, there can't be any other way for them to do it. So it can't be just because they want to just do it here, and they have plenty of room to do it elsewhere. And so what happens, a lot of this is either a non-conforming lot, so they gotta violate a little bit, or things like that. So, thoughts? Anybody have an issue with having a little bit extra flexibility?
Good.
That's good. Because it goes, the reason I brought it up, because it goes to the setbacks that we just talked about in the acreage, and so how strict do we want to be with those requirements versus, still has to go before appeals board, they still got to prove it, they still got to prove that there's no other alternative, they still have to do all that, but it provides a little bit easier time to get that variance. Okay.
Next meeting?
I don't know, 2 weeks?
Sound good, everybody?
What do you want, do we want to?
The chair speaks.
I'm waiting for Chris to tell us when he's gonna be.
I'm meeting myself every day.
Yeah.
I think that's.
2 weeks sounds good.
Do you guys want to just finish up this? Do you want to delve into another ordinance?
I think we should finish it.
Try to finish this one up?
Write down all that.
Yeah, I don't wanna be skipping around everywhere.
Outside concrete together.
Let's try to finish this one up.
I think we have a good start on this one, I think everybody worked hard.
Good conversation tonight, thanks for
It
meeting
was
us.
great, awesome.
Yes. Thank you.
Except for Bob crying over there in the
Feeling
corner.
positive.
No, he was whining.
Thank you.
Mostly Chris, I was at work today, and I was listening to all the news going on, and I got inside, and I go,